We're live, everybody, with our AEW All In London review. I am John Pollock, joined as always by Ting, and here we are, moments after the second Wembley Stadium show that AEW has presented in its history. How are you doing, Way?
Not bad. Yeah, it's what is it? 5:15 in the afternoon. I think I just saw a really great wrestling show.
It was a spectacular show. I thought that the production was incredible on the show. I think you had the peak to many different programs and everything leading to the main event that, much as everyone wanted to think that it was a foregone conclusion, I thought that was a very dramatic layout of the match and the way that they peaked with the championship title switch, which was the lasting image of All In, with Bryan Danielson flanked by his family and the BCC in the ring as Bryan Danielson becomes your champion and his career continues.
Yeah. I had tears in my eyes through most of that main event. And I guess
is that because of your eyelash from Friday night still bothering you?
No, that was resolved. This was tears from another reason, but that for me, as a 40-year-old person who's seen a lot of wrestling and doesn't really get fazed by it so much these days, it was a real rarity. It was an incredible match. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go through everything and leading up to that, but let's dive right into All In, the return to Wembley. We did not get an attendance figure announced during the show. Now, they may announce it at the press conference, which is probably starting imminently, but I did find it surprising that we didn't get any attendance announcement on the show.
Sure, yeah. I don't know the reason why. Could be because...
Let the attendance debate begin now. I'm ready for paid numbers, turnstile counts, sweet figures.
To me, an obvious, speculated reason would be because they don't want comparisons to the previous year. And despite this year being a tremendous number, the automatic comparisons to last year's record-breaking number will be automatic, and wouldn't look good, I suppose, for AEW.
Well, again, we will probably get a more specific number, but the last update from WrestleTix listed the show at 53,393. Now, if you want to compare that, and I know everyone loves to compare, this year's WrestleMania totals that we got, that WrestleNomics reported through the commission, worked out to be both nights doing just over 56,000 paid for both nights. They had larger attendance numbers announced the night of, but those were the paid figures, and we will see what detail we get regarding the Wembley Stadium number. But it was interesting to look at the experiment of their return to Wembley, announcing this 1 year ago at the conclusion of last year's show. They got the tickets on sale before the end of the year, and we saw the lion's share of tickets. They moved right away, and there was some movement over the last couple of months and this last week, but like 90% of these tickets were purchased almost immediately, and they were kind of hovering around this 45,000 figure for the longest time, and then we saw a bit of movement getting up to here just over 53,000.
What does that suggest? The people that are going to buy this tickets for this event are your hardcores that are probably excited enough to do it a year in advance, and they didn't necessarily pick up a lot of what you might consider casuals. Or what does it suggest to you?
I wouldn't characterize 45,000 as like a diehard hardcore audience. Like that's a pretty big number, but it did not have the same kind of level of just slow growth that we assumed when we saw that number when no matches were announced, and then figuring that, whenever you structure a on sale, like typically you see the big jump right out of the gate when tickets are put on sale, and then those last few days, and maybe you can create some kind of middle bump when something big gets announced for the show, such as a title versus career or something. I don't think there's any one match on here that was a huge ticket mover. This was another year where I think it was the idea of All In, the idea of Wembley Stadium, that was a big draw for people. And then it was aided by the card that for some that had experienced AEW at Wembley, you're looking at the card lineup as well. People are going to have all of their dissertations about this. I don't think a day like this can be categorized as like you knew this was not going to replicate last year, but it's going to be a discussion point regardless. And for those remembering the numbers, last year it was 81,035 paid, and of course the drop count 72,265 with a gate of about $10 million. So I am curious to see if we get a number at the press conference, if we even get a gate figure. You could still be looking at like, a $6 million gate, which would top all but the biggest shows in pro wrestling's history on this one day for AEW. And I would state that for a show that if you were to say there were 28,000 less people than last year, certainly didn't look it on the show. Like this looked like a major league product. I thought that I was very impressed with just the overall production value of this feeling like a major league presentation.
I didn't think that that 20,000 difference made any sort of like significant impact on the quality of the atmosphere on the show. I don't even think it was really all that noticeable. Like when you're talking about such a wide sort of like vista, with like some spread of like, empty seats, but like it's not like you could identify it, to if you didn't know the numbers in your head. It looked like a full stadium, and certainly in terms of atmosphere, in terms of crowd reaction, many of the matches certainly felt that they were just as lively as last year.
2-hour pre-show hosted by Renee Paquette, RJ City, and Jeff Jarrett. Some of the highlights, we had Madison Rayne on the panel. Nigel McGuinness was interviewed to discuss Danielson, stating that his timing, like always, is awful, and it will run out tonight. And he hopes that the clouds clear and the gods look down to watch the end of Danielson's career tonight. And those would not be the final words of Nigel McGuinness tonight. They also showed highlights of Renee's recent sit-down interviews, her up-close segments with Will Ospreay, and Mrs. Danielson, the one and only Brie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that Garcia is sort of reserved for her other projects.
Yes, this was the one and only Brie.
Brie. Yeah, well, Brie Danielson is, I think, what
Brie
they call
Danielson.
her. Yeah. I thought she was really, she was really good, I thought, Brie, throughout this. And, I mean, she didn't have, I guess, so much to do beyond this. But I think as, this is a role that is actually very important for the story, the wife of the guy who is teasing retirement, the guy who's trying to build the story about, like, how my family needs me and I have to choose between my family and my career. So her role was actually quite pivotal, and you can tell like the experience that she has both in professional wrestling and in sort of like just media, to allow her to perform this particular interview, I think really well. She did a great job here of, I think sort of like finding that balance between talking about the real reasons why her husband may be retiring, and also like trying to weave that into a storyline. In particular, I loved when she said she gave a reason for why their family flew out here. Their family flew out here not because they wanted to see their dad retire, but because they thought it would be great for their kids to see their dad fight his heart out to try to win a championship. And that to me, like, is another direct answer to the many criticisms that were out there about Bryan not speaking enough about wanting to win the championship and focusing all of his interview time on, wanting to retire. So I actually thought Brie did a great job here.
Yeah, and explaining that, yes, he is going to need to retire. His body is breaking down, but unlike, the last time, he didn't get to retire on his terms, and he wants to retire on his terms, and this is not his terms tonight. So that was the kind of like melding of the two kind of exits of Bryan Danielson together. And I was waiting for a follow-up here. How would you speak to the 18 to 34-year-old male that just wants Danielson and his matches to continue in perpetuity and has no care about him going home to raise a family?
I feel like she'd have a great response for it. Yeah.
The pre-show also featured multiple announcements, and we can kind of go through those now. The first was the footage of Tony Khan and Swerve Strickland signing a new contract and sealing it with a Tony Khan hug.
Sure. Yes.
The,
So this is real, right? This is legitimate.
yes.
He did sign a contract extension.
Yes.
Because they weren't very clear about it. They just said, here's Swerve signing a contract. We don't know contract for what.
I think this could have been explained. I think it's kind of self-explanatory watching this, but it was weird that the tee up from the panel was not like, it was kind of just in vague terms. Like at the back, it's like, well, regardless of what happens, AEW's in great hands talent-wise, and not really explaining this, nor did Tony Khan do a great deal of, other than saying, this is a great day, let's go. And they hugged. And what they were signing here wasn't exactly stated, but that's
Like we have contract signings all the time in pro wrestling, you know, whether it be for a match or for like a free agent, but it's you typically have the context of like what the contract is for. This is your world champion who I guess we all like just assumed was already on a long-term contract. Maybe it just whatever. In the end, it doesn't matter so much, but yes, this is apparently a legitimate contract renegotiation.
And the other announcements were for next year's big shows, which will include another AEW Grand Slam event. This will be Grand Slam Australia, taking place at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane on February the 15th. And then the other announcement later was that next year's Forbidden Door with New Japan will take place in London on August 24th. So that's really interesting, as we talked about on Friday, because it makes me wonder if the G1 will stay in its present time frame, because in theory, like, you would have none of the top New Japan stars up until that final week before this Forbidden Door show,
which is doable.
It is and it isn't.
Why?
Like if you had Konosuke Takeshita thrown onto tonight's show, you don't think that would be like not having any of these New Japan talents on television for the month leading into this?
Oh, you mean like doing the TV ahead of time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would be a bit of an issue. It's an issue that they're kind of facing already anyway, though. Like even this year, it felt like a more complete build to Forbidden Door, but I think a lot of that was done through video packages. You know, like you had Zack Sabre Jr. show up, you know, tonight. I think Forbidden Door is just always one of those shows that's kind of built off of reputation, built off of, you know, what the card is and the name value of, like, you know, these dream matches. I don't know if I necessarily see New Japan like changing their touring schedule so much just to accommodate this one show. I also wonder if at this point, like, how many G1 talents you necessarily need to do both the G1 and also Forbidden Door. At this point, a lot of their name brand and legacy guys aren't in the G1.
I mean, I just look at this year and it's like, yeah, you could have, like, if we had a Forbidden Door today and you're building it around Tanahashi and Ishii and Taichi.
It's not just that, but like, you know, like, yeah, Zach would have probably been in it. You probably would have found room for, like, you know, your next gen guys like a Suji and all that. Just because they've done the G1, I mean, I don't think it necessarily disqualifies them from doing something at Forbidden Door.
It you can always use them there. It's just the build up to it, because that's been a constant complaint in the past. But we will see. So and in theory, if they are also so you have the stadium show July 12th in Texas with All In, this show, and then presumably All Out in Chicago, which would still be their either Labor Day show or you keep it a couple of weeks out like they are this year. So those are the major announcements on the show. And we got the addition of a pair of multi-man tags, starting things off way, a 16-man tag with Private Party, Arya Davari, John Silver, Alex Reynolds, Anthony Ogogo, Satnam Singh, and Jay Lethal, taking on Kyle Fletcher, Rocky Romero, Kip Sabian, Tommy Billington, Leo Rush, Top Flight, and Action Andretti.
Yes. Just a spot for everybody on the show. Private Party, by the way, are supposedly the MCs of All In, and I suppose
they did a great job tonight as the MCs. I thought they were the glue that kept this show together.
All that an MC role really requires, and this is the case for the WWE as well, but it's really one on-camera appearance, and in this case, it was really their own entrance for their own match.
Wasn't my complaint at the end of the night that we didn't get more Private Party segments.
Oh, it's my main complaint. Yes,
I know. It takes it down to a thumbs in the middle at least. Don Callis is out on commentary. We also had Evil Uno out in the corner of Dark Order. All told, we had like 19 people involved in this match. So we just get right into things here. Lethal and Tom Billington, I guess, reprising the Savage Dynamite Kid match from the Wrestling Classic. They squared off. And we get a brawl with all 16 in the ring for the comedy visual of Satnam Singh going face to torso with Leo Rush. And they square off. Rush is tossed to the floor. Kip Sabian, who is morphing into Rip Rogers by the day, hits a split-legged moonsault onto Uno and Silver on the floor. And then Top Flight, Billington, and Fletcher all hit dives. There's a silly string to Sabian, followed by the gin and juice. And then after Dante hits a Kamigiri from the apron onto Arya Davari, he hits this crazy splash off the top and pins Davari in 11 minutes and 35 seconds for our showcase opener. And to me, this is the kind of way you want to start this. Throw a bunch of guys into this, get some spots in, and that's it. It was a crowd warming up type of match. That's what
it was. A good spot festy showcase match to, give some moments to a lot of these guys on the roster. For me, actually, the wrestling was good, as you would expect with like a very high quality, roster that they have. But I always love seeing the entrances and seeing the looks on these guys' faces, because for a lot of them, this is the biggest crowd that they'll ever wrestle in front of. And certainly for some like names like Anthony Ogogo or Kip Sabian, especially coming out in England here to Wembley Stadium, that to me is real, and it's one of those sort of moments that are worth watching.
The next one had much more story attached to it, because it's Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway against Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii. And Stokely comes out in his Michael Jackson inspired outfit from the Remember the Time music video. One of many musically inspired outfits on tonight's show.
I guess when you think of Wembley Stadium, I mean, that's a lot of what comes to mind. Quite the tribute here. He looked amazing.
So they keep Hathaway and Ishii away from one another, and I thought they built this up really well, with Hathaway playing just the cowardly manager that is trying to evade Ishii. So they let Willow and Statlander do much of the work in the match. Statlander is working over Nightingale's back, including hitting a Blue Thunder Bomb. And then there was a spot where Willow pops off her shoulders to avoid a Death Valley driver, and Statlander just takes the bump anyway. And it just looked like she just continued here. And Excalibur tried to explain that her momentum was already going, and therefore she fell off. And then Ishii and Hathaway are finally tagged in, and Stokely tries to chop him and shoulder tackle. Ishii does not budge. And then Statlander saves Stokely from taking a brainbuster, and she starts attacking Ishii. And Ishii does sell Statlander's offense, but after Ishii pops up, the crowd erupts on as he approaches Stokely. There's a powerbomb out of the corner by Ishii, and then a pounce is delivered to Statlander from Willow, and a sliding D puts Stokely down as Ishii pins him in 8 minutes and 10 seconds. So Willow gets to pick the stipulation at All Out against Chris Statlander.
Thought it was a fun, fan-friendly match. Willow and Stat, as always, looked very good together. Crowd responded really well to the Stokely and Ishii spots, and I thought Stokely Hathaway really
felt like this shot. Dude, Stokely was great in his role. He knew exactly what his purpose was in this match. It wasn't to do some flashy moves and impress everybody. Like, he knew exactly what his role was, and I thought Stokely was a lot of fun in this match.
He was the main attraction of this match. And really, I think, you need a figure like Tomohiro Ishii to really play that contrasting giant to oppose him. And I thought they were great together. So all of this kind of worked out to be like a good bit of promo for their all out match in 2 weeks.
How do you feel, I'm sure you could get into the head of Tomohiro Ishii, of what he's thinking about. Man, I feel a lot better at the end of the summer than I do most late August after those G1s. And I could get used to this. Give me a Stokely Hathaway every year.
I mean, I'm sure he's looking at Minoru Suzuki as maybe a bit of a template, to see how I can use the latter stages of my career using the notoriety I built as a badass, but without taking as many bumps as I'm used to taking most summers. So maybe we've seen the end of Tomohiro Ishii in the G1, and maybe we're starting to see, the comedy phase of the Tomohiro Ishii career.
Tony Schiavone brought out Dr. Martha Hart and Tony Khan, And Martha mentions coming over here from Canada, and she gets booed. They were not too receptive to Canada.
No.
Then she mentions the US and gets even louder boos. But she redeems herself by noting that she's very happy to be part of the British Commonwealth, and the crowd approved of this. And she wishes all the challengers and participants in the championship match as well, particularly the Owen Hart Cup winners, Bryan Danielson and Mariah May. I thought it was like a nice touch here, having Martha Hart with the attachment of the Owen Hart Cup to get the title shots on this show, which wasn't really emphasized too much in the lead up to this, but was how we set up two of the key title matches. But man, we need I don't know, maybe us and the grapple folks, we have to have like a coming together to ease the tensions that exist between Canada and the UK. Obviously, I was not aware of this dislike for Canadians.
I think this is very much a crowd that just wanted to hear about England and the UK this year.
Well, they got plenty of it. And then the final match on the pre-show, Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, Katsuyori Shibata, and Marshall and Ross Von Erich, accompanied by the star of the pre-show, Kevin Von Erich, against the Cage of Agony, Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett. And the heels attack on the floor before they even get to the ring, and the babyfaces gain control. We get a four-way unnatural kick. So they've gone from the
Golden Globes.
The Golden Globes, Shattered Dreams to the unnatural kick. And they get the advantage onto Guevara after the match begins. There's a GTH to Khan, and then Toa's in with a big pop-up Samoan. And Ross is taken out by Taven, and Taven hits a big dive over the top, and Dustin teases his own dive, and the crowd is all excited. He teases the dive, and then he stops and does a suck it sign and the sex gods pose. Then Brian Cage hits a Tope Con Hero over the top to the floor. And this is when Dustin was the smartest guy in this whole match, because Brian Cage did this dive and no one caught him, and he just crashed on the floor. This big dude, and nobody caught him, dude. It was such a nasty fall for him.
I think maybe they were all expecting him to get further distance than he actually got. And he happened to just kind of fall right in the hole that everybody else made.
Well, there were like 5 guys here, and Brian Cage just
he ate it.
For like your pre-show spot. Guevara then goes to the top and hits a shooting star to everyone on the floor. And then we got a Tower of Doom spot with the Gates of Agony at the bottom launching this, and their partner Brian Cage is on top, who takes the superplex here. These are the worst partners. Rhodes hits a
sacrifice play.
Okay, well, Brian Cage did a lot of sacrificing in these 60 seconds. The Gates then toss Shibata up in the air for Brian Cage to catch with a power bomb, but they didn't toss him well enough, so Shibata just lands on the floor and grabs the back of his head and rolls out.
I do not like that move at all. You're just tossing a guy right into a power bomb. Maybe like 9 times out of 10, like it's perfectly safe. But God, when it's a guy like Shibata, I still really cringe with anything involving his upper neck area and head.
Shibata did come back, and he just ripped the head off of Mike Bennett with this baseball slide drop kick. And then Marshall hit a moonsault, almost overshot him. So it was, as Excalibur called it, a moonsault into a headbutt. And then Guevara finishes with the scariest swanton, where he goes straight up and then like straight down. And as he rotates, dude, Matt Taven took every ounce of Sammy Guevara's body weight on top of him.
It was every bit of Jeff Hardy's swanton.
Oh God, this was Sammy's tribute to Jeff Hardy. 11 minutes and 10 seconds. I thought this was a super sloppy match. I thought there was just some like stuff where it was like way too much going on. The timing was poor in a lot of these spots, and it would not have surprised me if some guys had some bumps and bruises coming out of this one. I just felt this one was not a clean match in the least.
It was a bit of a busy match, with a lot of people in there. I thought it was a match where like everybody kind of had to get their shit in, and if you're into that sort of match, then it was entertaining. On this card, though, like especially on the 0 hour, I definitely felt like there was too much of just wanting to cram everybody in, and then too much of everybody wanting to get their shit in all of these matches. And so that by the end, all of it felt like a bit of a blur. And I almost felt like it worked to the detriment of like a match that actually did matter in the on the main card in the trios ladder match, where another very similar type of match. So by the end of it, you kind of had like 3 matches that were like, here's a bunch of guys, here's everybody doing their big spots one after the other, and I think it kind of hurt to the detriment of at least all 3 of them together.
And I think everyone knew what the big spot was going to be, and it was the post match where the losers attack, and Kevin Von Erich enters the ring, and he's got the flip flops are off, and he applies the claw onto Matt Taven. Place goes nuts, and we get a 5-way Iron Claw spot, and everyone goes nuts. And the easy pop to use with Kevin Von Erich in front of a stadium.
That's right, man. Hey, before we go, mind just turning down the gain a little bit on your mic? Just we're getting a little bit of distortion, some live tech.
Hopefully that's better.
Yeah, I'll adjust from there. Thank you very much, John.
Saraya and Harley Cameron came out with the Knight family, and they get booed as Saraya is yelling at them that this is her country. She is the Queen of England and won the women's title at last year's show. She's not even booked this year, which I guess she was. Someone booked this segment.
Well, no, not booked in a match, I guess.
Okay. Well, she says she is the best female wrestler to ever come out of England, and the show will not continue until she receives her respect. And she's joined by the whole Knight clan here, including her mother, Sweet Saraya. And then Jamie Hayter's music plays, and she comes out to a big pop. She has not wrestled since May of last year, and Sweet Saraya tries to attack her from behind, but Hayter fights them all off, including a big lariat to Harley Cameron and the Knights retreat. They actually even teased a match, an impromptu match with Saraya and Jamie Hayter, but did not go that far. So Jamie Hayter is back, a big return to the women's division, and yeah, I don't know what the full story is. I don't know if we're going to get some crazy promo of her explaining what she's been through the last 15 months, but that was a very long sabbatical.
The fact that she not just came back but did physicality and quite a bit of it here too is a really promising and encouraging sign. She looks to be in great shape, so her return looks to be imminent. I'm so happy, like, for a lot of the people on the show, specifically the British wrestlers, to get these entrances, to get this chance to get that spotlight in front of Wembley Stadium, knowing that this company isn't returning to this place next year. And with the way wrestler contracts and careers work, you never know if they're going to be back in 2026. So for somebody like her who missed last year to finally get this sort of spotlight, get this sort of entrance, get this sort of like moment, I mean, again, all of this feels real, even just beyond the fiction of professional wrestling. So everybody was so happy to see her, and I'm really glad they found this spot to fit in. Great job by Saraya in setting it up too. A great use of her and her return, and her entire family, I should say.
And the pre-show ended with the entrances for the ladder match. I thought this was a great idea to end the pre-show with, and just teeing things up for the ladder match. And that's how the pre-show ended, with the arrivals of the Patriarchy, House of Black, Juice Robinson and the Guns, and then Pac, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta for our London ladder match for the AEW Trios titles. I've heard every description from a London's ladder match to London ladders match to a London ladder match, the LLM.
LLM. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly makes these London ladders?
Because half these ladders were the smallest ladders I've ever seen outside of WLC. Did you see how tiny some of these ladders were? And then they had one giant one.
I thought they were regular size ladders.
Dude, there were some ladders where I swear the guys were taller than the ladders.
Is that so?
Yes.
So what, did they have like really short roofs in London?
Maybe it's just a lot of shorter people in London at the London.
Wouldn't that necessitate taller ladders then, if they were so short?
Well,
I don't think that's true, by the way, but
you're already worried about feedback. We'll get an essay from somebody. Actually,
how they booed Canada. I don't want more smoke from.
Bring it on. Bring your humor to me. So we begin this. Claudio comes out with the CMLL Grand Prix trophy he won on Friday, and they have also
not only did that guy have to fly back and forth from Wales to Mexico
City
to back to London, he had to carry that thing through customs too.
Unreal,
oh, man.
Brutal. But he got to do his crab shuffle with Wheeler Yuta. I think you and I should do that before all our podcasts. We'll just need someone to pan across.
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
Okay. So this is my notes are like some really tiny ladders. That's my first note that I have here. Also, Pac came out super over.
Yes,
I mean,
another one of those guys who didn't get that moment last year and finally got it here.
So for whatever reason, we got the Bang Bang Gang here with doing like the full on like Dudley's tribute spot with the was up headbutt and then the get the tables.
So the only thing I'm thinking is because this is supposed to be sort of spiritually connected to TLC through
I get that
Christian, but they don't have, to our knowledge, any specific ties to the Dudleys. You know.
Yeah, it was I guess it was a spot to do in a TLC match. I guess it was their tribute to Devon and Bubba. So there you have it. Christian just disappears and he waits for the ring to be cleared, and that's when he comes down and gets caught. Somewhere in all of this, Claudio cut the top of his head. So this guy's man, what a week for him. He's got to fly back now with this giant trophy that he's got to probably check, and then he's probably got a sliced up head on the way back too.
I'm sure he's loving it in some way.
Then the camera's on the floor, and just out of nowhere comes Nick Wayne with the Wayne's World to Brody King off the turnbuckle, sending both through a table. Killswitch then climbs the ladder, and the crowd is chanting Luchasaurus at him, but then Cage wants to climb the ladder instead, so because of the delay, they get tipped over. We continue here. Wayne hits a suicide dive into a destroyer, sending Malachi off the apron onto the floor, which was a spot that was just insane. And this is when Juice pulls out the largest ladder in all of the UK. And it's so tall that when he sets it up, it's knocking into the belts. Like, he could have just knocked the belts down with this ladder if he just hit them.
Now that I see it, you're really not wrong. Like, when you compare the rungs here, even two of these like shorter ladders, I don't even know if it would equal this giant tall one right
like
there.
These guys had to climb right to the top to be able to reach it here. I mean, I was just like, who's grabbing the ladders? Look at that one on the floor, dude. Like, that's the full length of it. Like, who's getting to the top compared to the one Juice has there?
Only a little bit taller than the apron.
Yeah, that was a big discrepancy here. So this is where my focus goes in ladder matches in 2024. Okay, I don't care what you're falling off of or the table spots that you're building to. I've got my measuring tape out. So then we get Cage tipping Juice, so he's crotched on the top rope, and Cage smashes the chair into Pac and hits a kill switch onto the chair, and Yuta climbs the world's shortest ladder, and Cage sprays him in the eyes with something that Mother Wayne had passed over. Juice then blocks the spray from Mother Wayne using a chair and teases putting Mother Wayne through a table, which this crowd, boy, were they excited to see male on female violence, but was stopped by Killswitch, and Cage spears Buddy Matthews from one ladder off the other to a table in the corner. Killswitch is lifting up Christian in the Rhino roll from WrestleMania 17 when Pac climbs, knocking Cage off, and there is Pac seconds away and solidifies his Wembley moment in 18 minutes and 57 seconds, and him, Claudio, and Yuta are your new trios champions. And afterward, Malachi Black and Brody King enter the ring and they shake Pac's hand. No Buddy Matthews part of this post-match, but Brody and Malachi did.
Is that supposed to be in reference to something?
I don't know.
Well, maybe they're just happy for him. I'm sure they feuded like with Pac throughout the years. So this is the new BCC. Are we officially welcoming Pac in the BCC, or is he just like a, sort of part-time member?
They explain that Pac is not just a makeshift teammate. He has a lot of similarities to the BCC. And
sure. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So he's wait a second, not just a makeshift member? What does that mean then?
It means he's part of the fabric of the BCC, and he was out there for the post-match celebration with Danielson as well.
Yeah. No John Moxley on the show. I think maybe that's somewhat relevant. I love it. I please make him a full-time member. I think he fits perfectly in with this group, and I kind of said earlier,
the Bastard Combat Club.
Sure. Yes, I love it. Or Newcastle Combat Club, maybe the Newcastle branch of the Blackpool Combat Club. It was a fun match, very big, satisfying ladder and table spots. I thought Christian, much like Stokely Hathaway as the heel in his match against Ishii, like guys like Christian are, I think, the glue. That I think these sort of matches are built around, and he was very effective as a heel. Pac was by far the biggest babyface here, so it only made sense to kind of pit those two together at the very end. Again, maybe a criticism I have of this match is that it probably would have benefited without immediately following so many of the other multi-man spot fest types of matches on the pre-show. There just seemed to be one too many, and I think that's where like the sort of like handing out of like, hey, you get a Wembley match, you get a Wembley match, you get a Wembley match sort of like feeling is to the detriment of the show.
Yeah, I didn't think this reinvented the ladder match, but nothing is. I thought that it was a very good opener, like some big stunts. In particular, I thought by Nick Wayne, like that destroyer spot to the floor was insane on Malachi, who otherwise, like Malachi Black was invisible in this match. Like he just did not stand out in any particular way. Just kind of felt like House of Black, really. It was like very minimal in this match.
Well, I kind of would say that about their entire AEW run. Like they're cool. They're always like this thing maybe you can rely on seeing on Collision. But beyond that, they haven't like made such big waves in AEW itself.
Timeless Toni Storm and Mariah May was the second match on the pay-per-view for the Women's Championship. And for any concern about how is the crowd going to react to the British star in Mariah May, I mean, they knew exactly who was who in this match and who was the heel and who was the babyface, because Mariah was just inundated with boos as she comes out. And then they show her mother, Lorraine, in the front row. And I'm thinking, man, are you guys just trying to make it harder for yourselves to make sure Mariah May gets booed? Little did we know what would be in store for Lorraine in the front row. And they also show Mina Shirakawa in the royal box, seated next to Rachel Ellering. And then the opening video for Toni Storm, there's a black and white shot of her dated 1924, Wembley Stadium. So congratulations. This is her 100th anniversary of that Wembley appearance.
The idea was to show that like there's a plaque of her from her classic 1924 appearance here in Wembley Stadium somewhere in this building.
So in canon, she is like ageless. She's timeless.
She's timeless, exactly. Yes.
Luther also, Luther comes out, and I also learned this was his return. He has not been seen since the attack.
Oh, okay. Really?
Nobody noticed.
Yeah, that's
Luther
true.
has been gone for a month.
Yeah, okay.
But he's back, and he would play a role in this match. So I was most interested in this match of, like, I could see this match going many ways, and I thought that the way that they ended up doing this match was the best possible way, in that they had all the story elements that were worked into this match, but at its core, this was a grudge match, and these two just having like a war between one another. So we had the face off at the beginning. Toni is looking very sad while May is just disgusted at her. And then we go right into strikes, and the Mayday and Storm Zero are immediately stopped. And May executes a sunset bomb to Toni Storm on the floor and spits at Luther. Nigel is on commentary, and he had a great line asking if this is going to be the end of Toni Storm, like silent films, The Horse and Buggy, and Polio. Maybe that could be a future storyline for Toni Storm. She has to overcome polio.
We have something for that now. I don't know if that's going to be a big story.
But we could go back in 1924, maybe, when
True,
she battled
right?
polio.
Okay.
May
she's
hits
timeless. Then she can go to the future and get the vaccine, and then,
May hits the Stratisfaction, and then a flying knee off the apron sends her to the floor. And there's a ton of heat for May at this point. She comes over and kisses Nigel on the cheek. And then after May drills Luther, she walks over and slaps her mother as hard as she can in the face. Ooh. This was amazing. I thought this was such a great spot. I was like, I'm watching this. I was like, you got the desired reactions, but it's like you got the mother here in the front row. It's like, sometimes I'm critical that AEW, I feel too much. They just let it be like, we'll just let people react however they want. And we get away from like really having that solid babyface heel dynamic. And here it was like, this was a total out of left field spot. I thought it was excellent. Like, this crowd already hated Mariah May, and this took it to another level.
Oh, a move that would make Christian Cage very proud, I'm sure. Yeah. I also love the kiss to Nigel. I mean, it's It's I think one of the great things about Nigel on commentary is that he's been able to establish these sort of favorites, and for May to be able to recognize that while at the same time slapping her mother was perfect.
I'm just glad that when Mariah went over to kiss him, it wasn't 5 minutes later when she started bleeding. He probably would have not cared for that.
Yeah.
Because the Storm Zero is hit to Mariah on the steps and she comes up bloody. And if I'm not mistaken, we had the only blood on this show was Mariah May and then Danielson, I think. Am I missing anyone?
Could be right. Yeah.
So the blood was conserved on this show. And so Mariah is all bloody. And then Storm goes over to console Lorraine.
Babyface as she is.
Yes. She adopted a new daughter in Toni Storm, it appeared. So match continues. May then spits at Toni Storm. There was a lot of spit exchanged in this match. And May attacks her with 3 hip attacks before Storm fires out with a lariat and hits her own hip attack and a Storm Zero for a near fall. And Mariah May is giving her the middle finger. So Storm yanks the finger. They trade big slaps. They both go down after headbutts while Aubrey is knocked aside. There's a Mayday that Storm kicks out of. And then May reaches for the title belt. Luther pulls it away and it's Luther giving her the middle finger. So instead, May grabs the shoe and Storm stops her, takes the shoe, and she's warned not to do this. It's like, if she uses it, she keeps her title. So...
Right. Okay. But I guess it's more so using it, like the Tiger Driver. Like would that be going too far?
It's too far. It's too far to use.
She was at least trying to show that she was hesitant because I guess there's still love for Mariah May.
Yeah. She didn't want to hit her with the heel, and so we had a great counter. She instead goes for the Storm Zero, and it's turned into a jackknife cover, which she kicks out of. May kisses her on the head and then hits the Storm Zero onto Toni, and it's Mariah May pinning her at 15 minutes and 16 seconds. Again, this match was my big question mark on the show. I could have seen it going multiple ways. I could have seen this being I could have seen this match just totally missing the mark. I thought they did a great job in this match. And by the end of the show, this wasn't my match of the show, but this was definitely in the positive column. I thought these two did a great job. And I thought Mariah May, this match was about taking this recent heel turn from Mariah May. And this match, Toni Storm her task was get her into a real solid position as a top heel in this division. That was achieved. Mariah May, this was a great performance by her in the match. But I thought Toni was great as well. And they really structured this effectively.
Yeah. I think for all the pressure that was on these two heading into this, I mean, again, for me, and I think for a lot of people, this was the best, at least most long-term built story heading into this. For them to come in with all that pressure and all those expectations, and especially for somebody like Mariah May, who is still so young and so relatively inexperienced doing sort of North American style, like acting infused professional wrestling. For her and for both of them to come out this strong with not just the character work, but also the in-ring quality here, I think that's really commendable. It is very impressive. They stuck the landing on this incredible story that they've built up until this point, and that is just it deserves, I think, praise not just for tonight, but the entire months of work and people like RJ City and Tony Khan and whoever else has been helping in the back to put this entire thing together. They couldn't have asked for a better character in Toni Storm, but a better opponent here in Mariah May, who continues to impress me so much with her ability to just handle this pressure and to not just not just manage it, but to excel in it. She's a tremendous heel and already feels like a top level heel that is deserving of this top level spot in the division. They came out here and Corey was asking on Rewind to SmackDown yesterday how much melodrama we would see. And they did the smart thing. They gave you a straight up match that was hard hitting and everything you wanted athletically out of an AEW Women's Championship match, but they still saved some room for the melodrama at the end. And I think it was a really good balance and a very satisfying end result.
Yeah, it's very tricky. Like, I think we saw with Drew and Punk attempting this at SummerSlam, and that did not compute with a lot of people. On the other hand, I mean, we saw a heavy amount of it with Danielson later tonight in the main event. It's very tricky, and I would argue it's tougher in an AEW setting because I do feel like for their pay-per-views, it's such a high quality you're expecting that I feel fans are less open to kind of veering outside of the lines. But I thought they really handled this well, and I thought that this match was better than I anticipated it was going to be. I thought both did a really great job. And the crowd, Toni Storm is left in the ring. The crowd is singing for her, and she's leaving to this big ovation. So it's kind of interesting the way they'll leave. Like last year, it was the story she lost at Wembley, and that precipitated the character shift and going crazy. And this one, she was almost leaving in she was leaving to the ovation of the crowd, and how they follow this will be interesting too. If they get away from this and what the follow up is. Nothing with Mina Shirakawa outside of a couple of the crowd shots, but I mean,
the fact that they did focus on her tells me that there's going to be follow up. Like maybe Mina Shirakawa is the first opponent for Mariah May. I think that would make perfect sense. But for Toni Storm to kind of like, they gave space for her to get a bit of a standing ovation. And I almost feel like find those moments kind of rare with like these AEW shows where like they're so densely packed that somebody wins, you just kind of cut to the back. But they gave room here to try to like, let the crowd give respect to Toni Storm for this 281-day run that she's had. And this conclusion of this really, really excellent story.
Fozzy performs as the Learning Tree enters. So we got a Fozzy concert, Way.
A two-time Wembley performer here, Fozzy.
Not too many people played Wembley twice in their careers. So this was his new theme that he played. And then Hook is out with his left bandaged eye. And you also notice they played like the little flat line of Taz's entrance at the beginning of this.
Yes.
And Taz is on commentary for this match where he joins Shivani and Excalibur. But as the match begins, Big Bill and Bryan Keith immediately attack. And we should rewind to Collision because after the Dynamite tapings, they taped Collision on Wednesday. And Big Bill, I would say it was 1A and 1B, where if you were watching Collision, you would think, okay, forget this Ospreay and Mercedes. We're building this promotion around Jeff Jarrett and Big Bill moving forward because they were so incredibly over. And it was not shocking to me that this crowd piggybacked off of Wales, and Big Bill suddenly is this cult babyface to this audience. And he was so heavily involved in the match with the interference that every time Big Bill would get involved, they cheered Big Bill over Hook, but that did not extend to Jericho. It was not like he was becoming their default. They weren't putting their support behind Jericho. So this became very tricky. Like, I think they had to position, like they gave Hook everything. He's fighting with one eye. He's fighting a 3-on-1 disadvantage. He's being attacked by weapons. And I think to some of the crowd, I think like there is some of that push and pull with Hook as this guy that they are pushing at such an aggressive level. And they see that and they're migrating towards Big Bill, who is just taken off.
Yeah. I don't think like they were ever at risk of like booing Hook, for instance, but like I do find it interesting how the UK crowd has adopted Big Bill as sort of like their ironic favorite. Unless I'm sure there's some very legitimate reason. He's a very talented guy. Maybe even
Taz explained it. It's because he looks like Big Ben.
That I think he should change his name permanently to Big Ben and maybe just permanently stay over in the UK wrestling in front of these crowds. But I think it added a uniquely sort of special, unpredictable element to the match. Anytime Big Bill was the center of attention, I think things automatically were made that much more captivating and interesting. I'm curious to see if any of that sticks around with him, when they come back to the US.
I think crowds in the US are going to copy and just follow up on Big Bill. Like it doesn't like tonight was like example one of just an audience that saw this and mimicked it. And I could definitely see this kind of following Big Bill.
I think they should do whatever they can to call attention to it so that it can educate the crowd to do it. Because I don't know if like I expect every US city to just automatically pick it up.
Jericho brought in various weapons, including kendo sticks, and then he had a bag of cricket balls that when he emptied these, I thought these were apples. And I think the crowd might have been confused too, because when he started whipping these and Hook started using them, there wasn't a huge reaction, but then Hook got the cricket bat. And I think then the crowd realized like what these were, because these just looked like red balls. And
you and I didn't grow up around cricket, so I don't know if we could speak to the familiarity of.
Well, when he dumped these, objects. I heard crickets in the crowd because no one reacted to these.
Maybe that was that reaction.
Hook used a T-bone while using the cricket bat, and then it's Hook getting free of the walls of Jericho and applies it himself when Big Bill breaks it up. So the crowd is chanting, "We want Big Bill." Chant I've never heard in my life. And then a barbed wire board is brought out, of course, and placed onto a table. It would end up being that Jericho would end up missing with a pool cue, nailing Big Bill, who would go through the barbed wire board to his demise.
Yeah.
Then they also did the spot where Jericho goes after the good eye of Hook, and Hook is pretending that he has lost vision in his other eye, and he's swinging wildly, and then it's all a plot. He really can see and attacks Jericho, and Taz explains to us that he was working everybody.
So he was never one-eyed to begin with.
I guess not.
Yet he purposely decided to wrestle half this match with one eye.
This was our 4D chess moment of the night. And Keith,
it'd be one thing if it was like a bandage that, I don't know, was like white or I don't know, or like somewhat see-through. Maybe he was wearing glasses, but like he looked legitimately like he kind of like put himself at a handicap here for most of this match that he could have lost.
This is a lot of effort for I got you. Mm-hmm. Joke's on you. I did this to myself for the last month. So Bryan Keith uses the belt that Martha Hart gave Jericho. This leads to a near fall. Taz starts getting upset. And I would say the high point of this match was Taz getting to his feet, and the place goes nuts as he applies the Taz mission onto Bryan Keith as Hook applies Red Rum, submitting Jericho at 10:15. This got the big pop. Hook hugged his father, and he wins the FTW title for the third time. I didn't think this match quite hit. I mean, it was entertaining, the Big Bill responses, but it was sort of just, let's just put all the weapons into this match. We'll do a barbed wire spot. But they did get their desired. I did like the ending here with Taz. I thought it was a good ending, and this was maybe the most clear-cut outcome up and down the show.
I think they've been building this Taz interference for quite a while. I mean, I feel like it's been many instances of this where Taz has just kind of stood by and hasn't done anything despite the crowd cheering for it. So they saved the moment for Wembley, and it got an appropriately big reaction whenever it finally did happen. I thought the match, like, I was not necessarily looking forward to this match on the show. On the main card, this might have been the match that kind of held the least of my interest, but I didn't dislike it. I didn't even feel bad about its inclusion on the show, because I don't think it ever overstayed its welcome. Like it provided something slightly different from what you got throughout the rest of the card, at least up until this point. The eye patch thing, I didn't really work for me, this entire time, but overall the crowd really, I think, helped make this match for me.
The Young Bucks, FTR, and the Acclaimed for the AEW tag titles. The Young Bucks come out in a tribute to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. And they are introduced as having more hits than the Beatles.
I don't know if the Beatles had too many wrestling matches, so I think they'd be right, at least when it comes to 5-star matches. Yes.
These were cool outfits, but they got upstaged because...
Well, it would have been made cooler if Okada and Jack Perry joined them, wouldn't it?
Oh, man. Could you imagine Okada in this outfit? Maybe that's for a future rendition. Yeah. But FTR, dude, they came out and they got custom-made Bret Hart-inspired trunks in pink and black. And this is because I don't think a lot of people realize that they've been influenced by Bret Hart, but they've always kept it kind of subtle. But on this show, they got trunks in the style of Bret Hart's color scheme that not too many people are familiar with, but that it was primarily black and pink that Bret wore in his career. So, I mean, this was so cool. I couldn't believe it.
I don't think FTR will let go of any opportunity to wear Bret Hart colors ever. You know,
When are they going to come out in that the 2010 like jorts Bret Hart run when he had the match with Bret or with Vince at
I don't know.
WrestleMania?
I don't know if they choose to remember that run.
No.
That wasn't really a part of his career. But yeah, like okay, fine. If you're in Calgary, yeah, pull out the Bret tights. Fine. If you're I don't know if you're in Wembley, like is that enough to pull out the Bret Hart tights? I would say only if like you're facing opponents that were wearing Davey Boy Smith tights, okay? And they were not. They were facing other opponents who were also wearing black and pink, you know? So I mean,
These guys need to be either feuding with or paired with Tommy Billington. I think
so I was
that's
kind
the
of
next...
although this was not the most egregious use of poor color coordination when it came to matching tights that weren't supposed to match that were matching in tag matches tonight, because we had Sammy Guevara and Brian Cage both wearing Wolverine colors.
Yeah,
And
someone even posted like the Spider-Man meme, and I think Brian Cage retweeted it, so it was noted.
yeah. Anyway.
The Acclaimed come out, and we do get a Max Caster rap stating how FTR look like members of the English Defense League, and my British friends on my timeline thought this was quite the deep, quite the referential cut that they included here, and that FTR has Bret Hart matches in their spank bank, while stating that the Bucks, I guess, talking about their Reebok pumps, all they've ever had to pump was their penises. So they grab their dicks.
Yeah.
So that began our match. Some light CM Punk chants towards the Bucks at various points, as Jack Perry would get later as well. There's a double scissor me timbers onto the Bucks at the same time, and then Dax and Cash hit stereo Germans. There are 3 successive leaps off the top, with the target getting their knees up on each of the occasions, and then all 6 go down from double clothesline spots. Nick then proceeds with a springboard Rana to Cash, and Cash shoves Nick off the top to stop a TK driver and hits a shatter machine, but Rick Knox is pulled out. I was starting to get to my threshold of amount of times that the ref has to miss something behind his back, because there were a lot of them on this show, and not exactly the most creative setups for your refs to just have to look silly. Nick takes out Daddy Ass with a super kick, and then Matt invites Max Caster to join him for an EVP trigger on Dax, so they hit it together, and then Max pairs with Cash Wheeler to hit a shatter machine onto Matt. And the Bucks hit low blows on the Acclaimed. More silly spots distracting Rick Knox, as a belt shot is stopped with a famouser by Billy onto Matt, and that leads to an arrival mic drop near fall when Nick makes the save. And then, as Knox is distracted again, Nick hits Dax with the belt shot, rolls him up for a near fall, and then there's an EVP trigger to Dax, and the cover is made at 13 minutes and 33 seconds, and Cash was too late to make the save. So the Bucks retain, beating FTR, but as we spoke about on our preview, the lead up to this was that the Acclaimed, neither of these teams were able to beat the Acclaimed in the lead up to this match, and it does keep the Acclaimed clean for a rematch of some sort, although it looks like we're having another team entering the mix here, as GYV, Zach Gibson and James Gibson appeared to issue a challenge to the Bucks, but then they attacked FTR. So it looks like I could see them doing the Bucks and Acclaimed immediately out of this, and maybe an eliminator match with GYV and FTR, but several directions you can go from here. I like the match. Certainly didn't reach, though, a higher expectation level that I think you would have given who was involved.
Sure, I agree with that. And like it was a good sprinting Buck style of match, but I think it was only a little bit better than what you would typically see on Dynamite. And when you're talking about a pay-per-view, when you're talking about a Wembley Stadium, like the biggest show of the year, I think we're looking for something a bit more special, a bit more unique, a little bit more creative, and honestly, a little bit more in depth in terms of storytelling. I don't think this match had that, and I think that ultimately affected like how much they could really do to capture our attentions. It was a good match, as I think you'd usually expect out of this very talented crop of 6, but didn't feel special enough for a Wembley Stadium show.
The Casino Gauntlet match followed the tag title match, so they explained that the winner can use their title shot anytime they want.
like a Money in the Bank.
That's how it was positioned.
Yeah.
So Orange Cassidy is first, as had been decided on television, and we get
the entrance.
We get a Mr. Bean parody for Orange Cassidy on the video, falling from the sky.
So awesome. Yeah. One of the few British references that I feel like we would get internationally.
Yeah, we got Mr. Bean, EDL, and Cricket.
And Barry Scott.
That's right, Barry Scott. There was a Barry Scott sign on the pre-show that you could see. Like someone hovering over the desk had a Barry Scott sign.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is Kazuchika Okada, who gets a monster reaction. I mean, first of all, it's the surprise of like, I think people might have assumed Okada would be in this match, but didn't know for sure. So when he does walk out at Wembley, it's a gigantic reaction. And it made me think, like we talk about some of the pre-show guys, like this is the biggest crowd they've ever worked in front of. This, unless I'm just totally skipping on something, like I don't think any Wrestle Kingdom has done a legit 50,000 people that Okada has been on. This might be the biggest crowd Okada's wrestled in front of, unless I'm just totally forgetting something. I think it is.
What other show in history would have hit 50,000 in recent years?
Yeah, like none of these Tokyo Dome shows have. Yeah, like when you think about it that way, like it's just, again, like some people are going to honestly try to dismiss 53,000 people, and it's like that's an incredible number that that they did here for your second year coming back to a stadium 1 year later. So Orange and Okada, with the chaos history, they embrace an Okada who's just like the master, the guy who everyone was worried like, will he find the hard camera? This guy owns the hard camera. All right, he just stares it like this deadpan stare as he's hugging Orange and just puts the boots to Orange. And Orange stops a Rainmaker by placing his hands into his pockets. The countdown clock begins. The intervals seemed all over the place, but our third entrant is...
That is something that they're saying is sort of the rule, right?
They've stated that like it isn't a hard fixed time. Yeah.
And I love that. Like they're bullshit anyway, like during the
How
Rumble.
often does it come? Whenever the fuck Tony Khan wants to put someone in. Okay?
Just tell
That's
me
the
it's
rule.
random. I fully accept it. Yes.
Number 3 is Nigel McGuinness. And this crowd, like, they instantly recognized the music. They probably saw the font on the screen too.
Yeah.
But out comes Nigel at 48 years of age with a body that looks like it's 28. And
he's in better shape than when he was an active wrestler. At least he looks, slimmed down and chiseled, more chiseled than when he was. This was the moment of the show up until this point, like obviously like there's so much discussion and even rumor about Danielson facing Nigel for this particular show in the months leading up to it. When we found out we didn't get that, I think we kind of shut the door on just even seeing Nigel period on the show as a wrestler. I don't know why I didn't consider him for this Casino Gauntlet. It's the perfect place to have him arrive. And he gets this incredible entrance at Wembley. Again, maybe like for all the Brits getting this sort of entrance, I think it means something extra special than it could mean to any certainly like more than you and I can recognize. Yeah. So for him to get this return in this sort of ovation, in this sort of spotlight, was to me one of the most heartwarming things on this entire show.
I mean, the only thing that would have topped it is if he came out in Ultimate Warrior paint like he had at SummerSlam 92 when he attended at Wembley Stadium.
Sure.
As great as this was, I mean, there's one thing that we do have to address, and that is that for the last 12 and a half years, independent wrestler out of West Virginia, TJ Phillips, has been able to sit back and tell all of his colleagues, I wrestled Nigel McGuinness in his last ever match in December of 2011. And for 12 and a half years, that was his biggest noteworthy event. He worked Nigel in his retirement match, immortalized on a documentary Nigel produced. But today, Nigel broke that retirement and he came out, and TJ Phillips no longer can cling to that trivia note.
Well, he could say I wrestled Nigel in his last singles match. That's still
I think that's going to be expiring in time as well.
Oh, but, yeah.
Great pop here for Nigel.
Amazing.
And again,
Amazing.
like 48 years old here coming out.
Well, clearly he's been training for something.
I mean, the guy looks great here. Yeah. Number 4 was Kyle O'Reilly. So we get him and Nigel squaring off, and both are doing the Les Kellett rebound lariat out of the ropes. And all of a sudden
Thank you for giving credit to Les Kellett. That's a really nice
I mean,
attribute.
that is the origin of the spot. One of the best lines here was Taz all of a sudden realizing, wait, does this mean I'm going to have to work Saturdays? Because we better have a talk about this if Nigel's making a comeback and they need someone on Collision.
I think it means Taz should be training to get set to jump into the next year's Casino Gauntlet.
Dude, Taz ain't doing one of these gauntlets. I promise you that. Cassidy ducks another Rainmaker. And then number 5. Oh, you want to book me all of a sudden 1 week after I win the bloody G1? And it's Zack Sabre Jr. coming out. I've been working on it daily. Way. Tell me how well.
What does the conversation sound like between Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel McGuinness? What do you think these two are saying to each other in the ring right here?
I thought you were fucking retired. I heard you yelling in your car. It's late, folks. So anyway, you get to see Zack and Nigel McGuinness. I just thought some of these these are interactions I never envisioned Nigel having.
Well, that's exactly the draw of the Casino Gauntlet match. Okay, AEW, Tony Khan has found himself a toy box of just some of the most incredible pieces that somebody could curate from wrestling's entire history. And this is his match where he can pair them up, one by one with guys that you never even expected, because they don't announce who's ahead of this ahead of time. Like, you're getting Okada in this match. Now you're getting any sort of like pairing with Okada feels special. You're getting Zack in this match, and you're getting Nigel in this match, and any pairing with anybody, especially the British wrestlers in there with Nigel, feels very special. Have these two ever shared a ring as active wrestlers before?
I would I would have to double check that one, but I'd be 90% sure that this was a first time meeting.
Yeah, Cage Match tells me they haven't had a match together. So even this is monumental, So yeah, and for these two to have that moment in Wembley, just amazing.
So you get Zack and McGuinness together. Their crowd's electric for this. Okada works with Zack briefly, and Okada gives his middle finger to the crowd. So Zack then grabs the middle finger and ties up Okada. 6th is Roderick Strong, followed by Mark Briscoe, who gets a huge pop, and then Hangman Page is the 8th entrant into the match, and he comes in and starts attacking Okada. He hits a apron bomb to Roderick. Cassidy ducks the buckshot lariat, but then it's Hangman with the Deadeye, which Mark Briscoe breaks up. And then number 9. Outside of Big Daddy, I don't think anyone was going to get a pop like this. Jeff Jarrett. Dude, this place exploded for Jeff Jarrett. This was one of the biggest pops on the whole show, was Jeff Jarrett and that music hitting. And he comes out and he's joined by Karen, and he locks his eyes on Hangman. So they start going at it, and forget Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel McGuinness. We get Jeff Jarrett trading punches with Zack Sabre Jr.
I would love to see that match.
Jeff Jarrett and Zack. I mean, fly Zack over to Champaign, Illinois on Wednesday.
Why don't we give him an IWGP title shot right now?
I mean, at this point,
put him in the G1.
The Bullet Club's own Jeff Jarrett. He does the Fargo strut, and then as he's hitting the 10 punches in the corner, Page power bombs Jarrett in front of everyone, and then Page teases going after Karen. Number 10 is the debuting Ricochet, and he comes out, obviously huge reaction for Ricochet, and I'm going to state this off the bat here. I didn't feel this was necessary for the match. I just thought that at the end of this show, I think Ricochet should have been introduced in such a way that, yes, bring him out in front of this crowd, but let's announce his first match. If he was not winning this match, I feel by the end of this show, you were not thinking about Ricochet, and you should be thinking about Ricochet. And after watching this whole show, like he wasn't involved in anything beyond this, I would have just had him introduced by Tony Khan or Tony Schiavone, and it's the big pop, and I'm going to wrestle on Dynamite this week, or I'm wrestling it all out, whatever it is. But this is a guy who his first match in AEW, I think you could sell people on the idea of seeing Ricochet outside of a WWE ring for the first time in all these years. It got great pop in the moment, but I felt by the end of this show, was he one of the 3 things you were immediately thinking about on the show? Maybe he was, but I did not like this introduction of Ricochet.
Yeah, I don't fully disagree. I understand why Tony did it, though. I think there's the allure of, like, first of all, wanting to add surprises for your big show of the year to leave people satisfied. I think there's the allure of having this entrance take place in front of the biggest crowd that you're going to have all year. And beyond, I think, introducing Ricochet, I think wanting to seeing Ricochet wrestle and interact with so many of the names in this Casino Gauntlet were also part of the novelty, and maybe part of the memory of, doing this debut. But I don't disagree with you in saying that by the end of the show, I wasn't necessarily thinking about this. My preference would have been for him to have some sort of face-off or interaction with Will Ospreay, just to kind of like put that spotlight on that rivalry that much more, and to just put the emphasis on Ricochet that much more. Here, he had a really impressive debut, looked great in what he had to do, but by the end of the match, kind of felt like a bit of a footnote, and therefore maybe just a member of the mid card. Now, all of that can change. They can have the interaction with Will Ospreay, I think, on Dynamite this Wednesday, and give him that sort of spotlight then. And I still think there's value.
If they do a spot with him and Ospreay on Wednesday, I'm going to hate this even worse, because at the end of that match, Ricochet coming out, like, I'm not going to get upset about that now because maybe they're not going in that direction. But if they do, I mean, that is 10 times more effective, is Ricochet just walking out at the end of that match and the two lock eyes, and then we cut to the next video package. I mean,
to me, I wait to see how it feels, after it's done. Because maybe Tony just wants to save something for TV. I also think that there's a lot of value in promoting Ricochet's first singles match. Like you kind of joke about the dude who had Nigel's last singles match, but there's a difference between somebody making a battle royal appearance and also.
So you're saying Ricochet versus TJ Phillips on Dynamite?
Yeah.
Ricochet did this, he did look great for the brief time he was in this match, including scaling to the top, regaining his balance on the top, and then finishing a shooting star press to the floor. Like, this guy's balance is insane.
It was amazing. Like, it felt like he just came out here and was like, I can do anything I think about in this ring on these ropes, and it's not going to be difficult at all. And that's how it came across. Like, this is like the high level sort of like comfort doing that style that is so rarely seen, that I don't know, for some reason didn't feel so special in the WWE anymore. Certainly by the time he was wrestling those speed matches, like, we just kind of all took it for granted. But this kind of colored him in a very different context.
Then Christian Cage is the 11th entrant. He's limping to the ring, selling the effects of the ladder match. And he is met with a high cross from Ricochet to the floor. And then a buckshot attempt is attempted when Karen Jarrett grabs Hangman, and it leads to a guitar shot from Jeff for the big pop. And then Okada hits Jeff Jarrett with the Rainmaker. And then after that, we have Cassidy backslide Zach out of a armbar attempt. And then we get Orange and Zach going back and forth. An end of heartache to Orange Cassidy. A froggy bow by Mark Briscoe onto Strong. And then a J Driller gets blocked by Nigel. Nigel hits a Tower of Doom Tower of London onto Kyle O'Reilly using Mark in place of the turnbuckle for a near fall. And then it's one final Les Kellett lariat to Kyle before Cage spears Nigel. And then the 12th entrant, it's Killshot, but the screen reads Luchasaurus as he comes out. And the idea here,
he's announced as Luchasaurus.
He's announced as Luchasaurus, that he has turned a leaf. He heard the chants. He heard you in the opener, and he's decided to rebrand himself. And he comes out, and you think he's going to go for Christian, but instead he chokeslams Kyle O'Reilly and puts Cage on top as Christian wins in 25 minutes and 57 seconds.
Right, yeah. And then immediately they cut to Hangman Page, who realizes that he's failed. And I thought it was a tremendously fun Casino Gauntlet match. Maybe the best one they've had. They've had only good Casino Gauntlet matches. This continues to like build itself as like one of my favorite Tony Khan original creations. And part of the reason is because they stack them with people who are upper tier main event, mid carders or main eventers, or people that are just like great wrestlers. So every pairing you see, every interaction you see is one that like will make you really excited if you're a fan of like professional wrestling. This had a lot of great surprises. This had a lot of like great just like holy shit moments. And I thought the Nigel stuff was, to me, like, so heartwarming to see. I think if this means he's back as an active wrestler, I hope he stays on commentary. I can't see him like wrestling full time, but like the occasional match back on TV, I think would be wonderful. I'd love to see him paired with GYV, for instance, as like a bit of a trio. I think that would make a lot of sense. Ricochet debut, he looked great, but he does need something a bit bigger to follow up. And the sort of outcome here with Christian, unfortunately, I think of the entire field, Christian might be one of the least interesting to me. I don't know if I care that much to see, like, what are we talking about?
I just think the way it was structured, like, you do have a bit of a backstory in that Christian did beat Danielson on TV. Like, it was almost a year ago, but I'm with you. I just felt like so much of this match felt as though it was like the ghosts of Bryan Danielson's past and who is going to be positioned here. And you're teasing people with another Okada match with Danielson, with a Zack match, with a Hangman for Swerve, or even Hangman with Danielson that have their history. All these different, Nigel even with Danielson, all these options. And it's Christian at the end that I can see people not having a huge spark of interest from the way that this one peaked. But
and the fact that that it's a cash-in stipulation almost seems to assure to me that they're setting up a Christian championship run. Could be based off of Danielson or not. It could be like, months from now. Could be a year from now. I guess we don't know the exact rules, but could be that long. And I don't know if I'm that excited for it. Like, I've really enjoyed Christian Cage in this sort of like mid-card role as part of the patriarchy, but I don't know if I want to see a world title run from Christian, or even like the suggestion of it with him like competing for it.
Well, we will see. I don't see it as being an immediate thing that they utilize.
But Adam Copeland's return too could change that. Like, I could see Christian and Adam Copeland feuding for the championship. But is that a feud that people want to see for the world title? I mean, anyway, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Next, we will get ahead of ourselves because we're going to the American Championship match between MJF and Will Ospreay. And Ospreay's entrance brought to you by Assassin's Creed Shadows. This is our Mark Shapiro entrance, sponsored by with break dancers.
It was good integration, I felt.
They had a good video here, and it was tying in the video game with Will Ospreay's journey towards this match and going through footage of New Japan and Rev Pro. And yeah, this was a pretty spectacular entrance that he had coming out with the break dancers, and then MJF in his WrestleMania 10 inspired Lex Luger red, white, blue with gold tights.
Okay, I was going to say Apollo Creed, but maybe there was a bit of.
Well, this was definitely an Apollo Creed outfit that he had, but then the straight trunks that he had on was I got right. the Luger inspired.
The Max Express.
Whatever people want to say about whether they loved that promo on Wednesday or not, man, this crowd was electric when this match began. Like, they were just buzzing when the bell rang. And
by the way, Excalibur mentioned somebody stole Max's Dynamite ring from the back from the locker room.
I missed that line because late in the match he just had the brass knucks. So maybe that was a true story. Someone stole his
the diamond
ring.
That's what Excalibur said. Yeah.
Maybe it was Kyle Fletcher who was doing a solid for Will.
Could be, sure. Yeah.
We do know that there is security footage that they must be able to. Maybe they'll air the security footage on television. We can find out the thief.
Now, is that not a felony though? Like, considering how much that ring is worth, in kayfabe. Okay, it's not just stealing brass knuckles. There, you're stealing like something that's worth at least $10,000. Isn't what?
Well, whoever is caught on camera with this should be facing prison time.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we also saw there were cupping marks on Will's lower back, as Excalibur explains how cupping works.
I mean, it's really just like massage. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's so indicative, but they can be. Yeah.
I think some of these wrestlers need to learn about scraping. Have you looked into like scraping?
I've had scraping done. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
you have.
I haven't had it done, but it's just
the
limited. Yes, exactly. The limited research I've looked into, it seems like that's a more effective model than cupping.
What? No, it's used together. I wouldn't say it's one or the other. Like, they're both sort of Eastern medicine techniques. Yeah.
There are arguments in that favor. We'll discuss at a later date when I can prepare a case.
All right.
MJF does the kangaroo kick early, and they're like, we thought this bullshit was done and over with. He caught Will off a space-flying tiger drop to the floor into a tombstone on the floor, and he is just working over Will. There's a crossroads by MJF for a 2 count, and then an Os cutter finally lands, and then a super Os cutter is hit off the top rope, but MJF gets his foot on the rope, and then he fakes a knee injury to catch Ospreay with a pile driver, and Ospreay comes back with the Stormbreaker out of nowhere for a 2 count, and after another Os cutter attempt is made onto the edge of the apron, MJF backs up, so Ospreay just crashes onto the edge of the apron and is hit with a Panama Sunrise on the edge, but beats the count in at 9. He stops the Heat Seeker, hits another Os cutter on the edge, and then the Hidden Blade off the apron misses MJF, and Will takes out the camera operator.
Ooh, this was a huge bump from, like, looked great, whoever this cameraman was.
Yeah. You know, someone would have suggested that, you know what? We should screw up a bunch of shots for the rest of the show to make this feel legitimate.
Sure. Suddenly the white balance is off. Like the focus is just like all over the place.
They miss like the finish of the match. They're showing a fan reaction as Danielson gets the tap. So the camera operator is dead. The Hidden Blade is stopped with a belt shot and a near fall. The amount of belt shots on this show, folks, a lot. So Max hits his brainbuster. Then MJF goes for his own Hidden Blade, but it's missed, and Ospreay sends MJF into referee Bryce Remsburg. So Bryce is down, and MJF calls for the Tiger Driver. Ospreay reverses, but it's stopped with a low blow from Max, who then pulls out the foreign object, not the Dynamite diamond ring, which has now been stolen, and he's got the brass knucks, and a masked man appears to take the brass knucks away, and it's revealed to be Daniel Garcia. And he stops MJF, and MJF is furious. He turns around into a Hidden Blade, and Ospreay hooks the arms, and he hits the Tiger Driver. And 50,000 people cheer for Paralysis as Ospreay covers him. Bryce returns to life and counts 3 at 25 minutes and 45 seconds. And I thought a spectacular match. This is one where, God, did these two, like, they went out and did a 1 second shy of a 60-minute match on TV, which, if I'm picking between the two, I do prefer the TV match, but I thought they had a hell of a match here. And I think this, well, for me, it's really a coin toss between this and the main event for match of the show. I thought both delivered in very different ways. There was obviously the heavier, I think, story attached to the main event, but this was, I like the fact that this was all built around the Tiger Driver, and they didn't feel the need to have to swerve everybody or do something different. It was like, this was what it was teased. We delivered it, and he won with the move. Like, I was thinking, like, please don't kick out of this Tiger Driver. Please don't kick out of this Tiger Driver, because I thought there was a chance of that. And this was a great reintroduction of Daniel Garcia. I saw some negativity to Garcia being involved, but I thought it tied in really well to the big attack. He was off TV for enough time that it sold the injury successfully, and that probably tells you that Daniel Garcia is sticking around as well.
Yes, I would think so. Because this
I don't think you're bringing him back at this point. If that was a question mark.
It's such a big spot to give him if you're not going to get some return on this investment, you know? So yeah, I feel that way too. I thought this was a great match, you know? Like, what's amazing is that, yeah, I've seen these two wrestle for an hour, but I didn't feel like any of this match suffered from that at all. In fact, like I said, my anticipation only grew from seeing the quality of match that these two were able to have, and they just continued here. What added to this, of course, was the atmosphere that made this match feel incredibly special. Several of the criticisms heading into this feud, I think, were, you know, laid upon some of the storytelling involving MJF's sort of like Americana stuff, and also the Tiger Driver 91 story, and whether or not it's effectively immersive. I feel like this match justified both of those things. You know, I think the presentation of MJF coming out in the American, I think he would have been booed the same, honestly, like even if he just came out straight, because I think he's facing Will Ospreay. The sort of like enemy territory guy is already implied. But the look added a lot to the presentation, made him feel special, made him feel that much more like a main eventer, in my opinion. And the Tiger Driver 91, like, it worked here, you know, like any tease of the move received a tremendous reaction. And by the time they got to the finish here with Ospreay delivering that move, it felt cathartic. It felt satisfying, and it felt definitive in a way that like concluded this feud. So, and it looked like a good one too, you know, like it wasn't like Kenny level, which I think almost like what made people too uncomfortable, but it also wasn't like the Danielson one, which I thought like didn't look tough enough. This looked devastating enough, while I think you could tell was still like relatively safe, and it tells me like maybe they've been working on it to make it look as satisfying as they can without, you know, actually hurting a guy's neck. It looked very good. The in-ring was, I think, top notch. Otherwise, the character work is top notch, and this atmosphere. You know, you can't watch a match like this and not feel like this is a product that feels special, at least on this evening.
I mean, that was one thing tonight. I mean, whatever you want to say about like the momentum of the company, like it felt so hot just with this atmosphere. It's hard not to when you have not just like 53,000 people plus, but like an engaged crowd that was into all the big stories. They knew who was who. Like this was really up until this match we're about to talk with. Like this had been a crowd that had been at a pretty consistent clip all night long. Now, the end of this match, I'm curious what they do after this, because logic would state that MJF Daniel Garcia is your next big match. I hope they don't do that at All Out, because I do think you need to sell the Tiger Driver for more than 2 weeks. Like there should be something, like there's repercussions when this move is hit, which they honestly like could have done more with Danielson, but they also had a story with Danielson to tell. And yes, he's had the taped up neck and everything, but this needs to be the move that there's a big toll when this move is executed, as it was here.
Oh, they put so much work into building. Sorry about that. That I think they need to sell that it's changed MJF somehow. He needs to have lasting repercussions.
Timeless MJF.
I wonder how that would turn out. Yeah. Okay. I think you get show tune MJF instead.
All right. Then it was Mercedes Moné against Dr. Britt Baker. And Britt just comes out to a regular entrance, and then Mercedes arrives in a chariot full of dogs.
Yeah, this kind of had me a little uneasy, just because I don't know when the dogs would have arrived into the chariot, but like there was really loud pyro preceding this entrance from the Britt Baker one.
Right.
And
This was something that Cody received a lot of crcriticism for with Pharaoh.
Yeah,
years
or
ago.
just anybody who owns a dog, like on the 4th of July, you know, like knowing how they react. So I'm hopeful that they took the steps to, you know, to maybe protect these dogs from that. But yeah, that you know, was spectacular entrance.
Couldn't have come in with a chariot though without dogs. You need the dogs.
Yes, I guess so.
So she is out, and the match begins, and Baker's immediately going for the lockjaw, and Moné just retreats and is hoisted on Camille's shoulders on the floor, and then teases a Panama Sunrise, but gets distracted by Camille, and then Moné hits a backbreaker and focuses on the back for the next like 10 minutes, working on the back, explaining the 10 months that she missed, largely due to the back injury, but also going over all the issues that she had. So there's a lot of just Moné in control here, and like it's not as though they were doing anything that was like standing out in a negative way, but whether it was late in the show, you were following Max and Ospreay, like this was the lowest this felt like the crowd reached. And there were some moments where they kind of regained things in this match, but overall this was a real struggle in front of the crowd. And I was not negative on the crowd either, because, you know, they got back into stuff afterwards. Like this was a match that it just did not, you know, excite this audience, and they were doing a lot of just it's a lot of just like heat work that kind of just wore out the crowd. And then the biggest reactions you got were like Camille's ejection and the Eddie spot. Like that was the stuff the audience seemed to sink their teeth into.
Yeah. I sense it was more the crowd's exhaustion than really anything. Like, I think about whether if this match, for instance, took place earlier on in the show, I think it would have received a much bigger reaction. So for me, content wasn't necessarily like the only thing about this. Like, style of match wasn't necessarily the only thing that created this sort of reaction. I think it was the length of the show and how spent this crowd was after Ospreay versus MJF. But you can criticize maybe match placement of this style of match coming after that, because by this point in the show, this crowd was looking for like, like big spectacle. They were looking for like, I guess, big career retirement stipulations.
They wanted someone doused in gasoline and the tease of someone being lit on fire.
Sure, yeah, and having like, I guess, a back injury, type of psychology match maybe wasn't necessarily to their taste at this point in the show.
Maybe if they had aired some scraping videos in the lead up to this, people would have known the state of her back.
A scraping and cupping session in ring, I think was
what this get that toxic release.
Yeah.
So Baker finally manages a curb stomp, and the crowd is giving them some DMD and CEO chants. But then Baker's most impressive spot here. Early in the match, she scoop slammed off the second turnbuckle, and Moné tries this again later. And Baker like flips almost like a moonsault counter to this scoop slam. I thought it was
awesome.
This was a great spot, and the crowd did react to that. But this is when Moné grabs the belt, and I swear to God, if I see one more belt shot on this show, I was going to lose my mind. And Baker tosses the strong women's belt over to Camille and does the Eddie spot lying down, and the referee catches Camille, and we have learned there is a red line you cannot pass with these referees, and that is if you are spotted with a belt on the apron, you are ejected. It's like, okay, that is the point of no return. As Camille is sent away and Baker is smiling and waving at her as she is sent out of Wembley Stadium.
Somehow it is the only instance where, like, even if the referee didn't see it, they can call for some repercussion. Yes.
So Baker hits the Panama Sunrise and a curb stomp, goes to the Rings of Saturn, but Moné bites her fingers to escape, and they get to their feet. Their arms are locked, and Moné runs Baker into the rope and hits the Moneymaker and pins her totally out of nowhere at 17 minutes and 21 seconds. I was literally in the midst of my notes, like just writing about a near fall spot that the crowd was not quite getting into, but this was the finish. I heard the 3 count. I could not believe this was the end. And that was it. And at this point, we were getting like match was over, and within 30 seconds, boom, we're going to the video package for the next match.
Yeah, on a show like this, I guess you always have to ask, like, was something cut for time? Like, if there's any sort of like
they had 17 minutes, so I can't look at the time as being
maybe they had 20. Maybe it was slotted for 25.
Those final 3 minutes.
But this match felt kind of like abruptly cut at the end without much of a crescendo built. And I'd say the coffin match felt like unusually short as well for like a match like that.
Yeah, that was one of the shortest matches on the show.
So by this point, maybe it's fair to ask, hey, was any of this cut out? But still, like, I think you would have expected a bigger run up to the finish, like up until the end. Even I think there were already criticisms you could have had. This like maybe was one of the only negative criticisms you could have about any match. And so much of that is because I think the star power here, and I think the relatively like well-received build into this match. Like this match was not short on star power. It wasn't even short on, I would say, interest going into it. And that's what made the sort of quiet reaction stand out that much more. So we kind of already talked about our reasons why they, could be the crowd that was tired, could be just a style of match that they weren't into. What I did love about it was the series of like body slams from the second rope and the counter to it, and the second time I thought that was very well done, very clever. I thought the wrestling overall throughout it was good, but again, this was just not a crowd that was there for it. And the finish, unfortunately, kind of cemented this match as like an unsatisfying match, because the finish didn't save it.
Yeah, I saw this as one of the more disappointing matches of the show, and it was positioned as one of the big matches. Like you can't even argue. Like this was positioned as sort of like your dream match scenario between these two with their first meeting. I didn't even disagree with the placement in it. Like you can in hindsight, but I mean it was one where it just did not reach that level by the end of it. The Young Bucks, we first have Jack Perry against Darby Allin coffin match for the TNT Championship, and Darby walks out, and Taz explains to us those are thumbtacks glued to his face. I had many questions. Jack Perry comes out and he has a body bag, and they have set up a funeral scene at ringside, complete with their photos, and right next to the flowers and the coffin. And early on, Darby dives onto Jack Perry, and he is grinding the tacks into the face of Jack Perry, and then follows by placing Jack Perry into a chair on the floor and hits a missile dropkick. Then places the coffin upright, and you know where this is going. Darby does his tope suicida right into a coffin, missing Jack Perry, who gets out of the way. And then Jack Perry has his bag, and we are not introducing cricket balls this late in the show. Instead, it's broken glass. Real or worked?
He didn't tell us.
No, but the crowd, they saw this glass. You would have thought that they were refunding everyone their money with their reaction. They were so happy to see broken glass. They start singing Cry Me a River, fuck CM Punk. And the Darby counters, sending Perry onto the glass and uses his skateboard. And Taz, in case folks were not sure about this, Taz notes to us this is not the first time Jack Perry has used glass at Wembley Stadium. Oh, yeah. There was that thing last year. Right. What a tie-in.
Well, you never know who's watching their first AEW show.
Yeah. You never, you might not realize
who's this PM
scapegoat for what?
Yeah.
Then Darby's hands are taped together by Perry. He still manages a coffin drop without the use of his hands, and then they fight up the ramp. Darby gets whipped with his own belt, and then he's hogtied with the belt around his legs and tossed off the stage. And this led to a big debate because Taz undersold the height of the stage, and Excalibur and Shivani are like, no, it's way more feet than that. And Taz is watching the replays like, okay, it's probably like 20 feet. So he was all over the place here in his guesstimates. And Perry places Darby into a body bag, drags him toward the coffin, and puts him in. Darby sits up while in the body bag, and Jack Perry hits his running knee strike, which puts Darby down. Jesus Christ!
What a crazy shot!
This is like the that Velociraptor that kills Sam Jackson in Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
Into the window.
Yeah, exactly.
And hits the knee strike, closes the coffin shut, and Jack Perry wins in about as definitive fashion as you could imagine. In 10 minutes and 38 seconds, this is the first time Darby has lost a coffin match, and a real significant, this was, we're not giving any out for Darby. This is just positioning Jack Perry as the clear-cut winner here. And I think this is going to fuel a lot of people about this idea of Darby eventually winning the AEW title, and you have a really solid challenger in Jack Perry many months down the road.
Yes.
But anyway, before we get to the post-match, how did you feel they did? And especially this was one of the shorter matches on the show.
Yeah, and it could be because they were cut for time. Could be because maybe they learned, hey, maybe looking at the Moné and Baker reaction, maybe this crowd isn't necessarily here for longer matches at this point, and they just want to get to the main event. I was more than welcoming of this shorter length. I thought they achieved everything they needed to. I was actually very impressed with Jack Perry here, and I know that might sound controversial to a lot of people who probably, I'm not necessarily sold on Jack Perry yet, but I thought in this match he looked appropriately vicious and like a killer, and did not hesitate with any of these spots, including throwing Darby Allin off of that stage, including delivering that beautiful running knee to Darby Allin before shutting this coffin. So Perry, I think, still has a long way to go before feeling like a world title type of guy. But I've been impressed by some of this transformation and some of his viciousness in a match like this. Darby Allin, as always, is just he goes 2,000%. Don't correct my math, but he just he commits to
Danielson would tell you that's not possible.
He commits to everything, that he does, and that was the case here, and it made him so delightful as a babyface. So in a short amount of time, I thought they achieved everything they could and set up a lot of time for this post-match.
The Young Bucks come out, and they have brought gasoline to Wembley Stadium, and they pour the gasoline over top of the coffin and on top of Darby, as Perry has a lighter. But then the lights go out, and we hear the sounds of Seek and Destroy as Sting comes into Wembley, huge pop, and he attacks all members of the Elite. He no-sells a chair shot from Jack Perry. Perry runs off, double scorpion death drop to the Bucks. And then after like 5 minutes, Sting realizes his best friend is locked in a coffin, and he goes to untie Darby, who is covered in gasoline in a close in a box, and rescued Darby.
A lovely little moment, continue to add, I think.
Nothing more heartwarming than saving a man from being lit on fire. I mean, that's true brotherhood.
Well, yeah, of course.
I thought this was it was a fun spectacle for the time it had. It was not my match of the show or anything, but I was only surprised at just how solid they went with Jack Perry in this role. I don't disagree with it at all.
No, I don't either. I think Perry is your project. Darby, I think, is already at a level. I don't think he loses anything from it, especially if they think that he's actually going to, or people think that he's going to actually win the championship afterwards. I love the Sting moment here. It's like our first appearance of Sting since his retirement, and maybe at this point it's clear that they're saving him for these big spots. I hope it might even be like once a year, and I'd be satisfied with that. He's now become the AEW's Undertaker, that'll just like occasionally show up, maybe to bail Darby Allin out of a really tricky situation once in a while. It was a really awesome, fan-friendly moment.
And then it was time for the main event. And there's no better way to tee up this match than seeing a shot of Bryan Danielson meditating. And what does this man think of when he's meditating? He thinks about Ring of Honor, Chicago Ridge, Frontier Fieldhouse, Night 1. It's Bryan Danielson. And we get shots of some of Danielson's greatest hits, a shot of his dad, a shot of him wrestling Kamala, which is a match that very much exists out there that you can watch. And then we just get all these family footage of his children, of Bree, and just all these different shots of him with his family and stating, "I will always choose you." Mm-hmm. And by the end of this, I'm like, who is rooting for this man to not go home to his family?
Well, okay, I think the video...
53,000 people, that was the answer.
I mean, I thought the video was meant to confuse that, John, because I think it was... So he says... So it's like Danielson meditating, like we're trying to, go through his head of what everything's going on, and it's sort of like a chronological progression of his entire career, and he's talking about his love of this thing. And he says, "I will always choose you always." Now, the footage shows that it's family. We're presuming that he's referring to his family, but I think by the end, we're realizing that he meant his first love, and that's professional wrestling.
He will always choose wrestling over his family?
Well, maybe for now, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the story of the match, John. Is this man having a struggle to choose between his family and choosing the thing that he loves? And tonight, he chose the thing that, his profession that he loves.
Europe plays, and out comes Bryan Danielson, and you had 53,000 people just singing the final countdown, and his family is there in the front row, his daughter, his son, and Bree, and everyone is chanting yes. Jim Ross has joined commentary, explaining that he signed Danielson to his first pro wrestling contract 25 years ago, and then DJ Who Kid asks whose house, and we get Flash Garments and Bun B playing Big Pressure. Out comes, we have Swerve out in his Black Panther attire. And
I don't know if this was Black Panther or not. I mean, it was black and it was gold, but
I mean, he's come out as Killmonger in the past, so I think people were seeing this as
could be
follow-up to that.
But
he turned around. He had also the heads of his past victims all on spikes.
Oh, awesome.
It's quite
Didn't
the
even
visual.
Notice that. And of course, comes out, and for all of his big matches, comes out with the Jimmy Rave robe, which I think is such a lovely tribute. And it makes him look amazing,
This was the best entrance on the show of anyone. Like Ospreay,
great.
Even Europe. Like this to me was my favorite entrance on the show. Like Swerve just felt like this was just such an awesome entrance. The audience just couldn't help but just be so behind this guy during this entrance. It was so great.
Both entrances I thought were outstanding.
Yeah, this felt like your biggest match of the year. That's what this felt like.
To my knowledge, this is the first time he's premiered this like Bun B and West Side Gun remix of his song.
I think so. Yeah, people were
I
noting
think
that.
it's amazing. You know, like the atmosphere and the feeling ahead of this main event were so strong, and you know, so much of it because Swerve is such an incredible villain, has become such an incredible villain, and was presented like such a big deal here. And this stipulation surrounding Bryan Danielson having his last match, like I felt going into this match very fully convinced that I was about to watch Bryan Danielson's final wrestling match. So it felt like very emotional, very special.
Well, the match begins, and Swerve, as he had promised, he starts trying to dissect Bryan. He's going after the knee, the arm, and then makes his way to the neck. And the first major spot of the match is a Death Valley driver on the edge of the apron after Prince Nana places a ring bell onto the edge where Danielson is dropped. And within 7 minutes, Danielson is leaking blood. And Swerve is asking, why do I need to do this with his family watching? And Swerve pulls Bryan. He got over this very quickly as he yanked Danielson by the wrists over in front of his kids and starts stomping their bloody father right in the head in front of them. And he's getting like right into Bree's face as well. How did you feel overall about like the usage of the kids here?
I didn't mind it. I enjoyed it. I know this is the type of thing that like make people uncomfortable. I have enough trust in their parenting to believe that these two people appropriately told their children about what this is and how nobody's really actually getting hurt. You're here to see dad at work. So feeling I have enough trust there, I was able to appreciate this as part of the show.
Well, they were a big part of the match, obviously.
Yeah.
He continues with a Swerve stomp, but Danielson catches him as he's coming down and turns it into a regal stretch, and he starts to fight back with kicks, and they go to the top, and Danielson has decided, you know what? It's time to do a tiger suplex off the top, and he hits Swerve with the tiger suplex. Then he is stomping in Swerve's head, applies cattle mutilation, but Swerve powers to his feet, and you know what Danielson's thinking? You know what? I might need neck surgery. I want to do a vertebraker tonight. So Swerve hits him with the vertebraker, and Dr. Sampson fires himself into the ring to check on Danielson, but Swerve sends them out of the ring as Danielson may be near paralysis here in the ring. So he hits a Swerve stomp. Bryan kicks out. Then 2 house calls, and Danielson looks towards his family and says, I'm sorry. And he reaches out to them as Swerve hits a 3rd house call.
So this to me was like maybe the part of the match that maybe suggested to me the most that opening video was meant to confuse us about whether or not Danielson was talking about I'll always choose you, you know, because I think so. And commentary was suggesting this: is Danielson saying I'm sorry because he's about to lose the match, or is he saying I'm sorry because of what he's about to do? I took it to mean it was Danielson saying, I'm sorry, I'm not choosing you. I'm choosing professional wrestling. And
maybe he should have
therefore,
said I'm sorry right before the tiger suplex off the top rope. Maybe that should have been his apology, because then he was making a clear-cut decision. My neck versus my life.
oh, he could have done that there too. But I thought this was like an incredibly emotional beat of this match where Danielson was actively telling his family, hey, I can't join you for now. I have to continue my wrestling career.
Maybe he just saw Deadpool.
Deadpool 2, exactly that story. Yeah.
Can't join what's her name in the afterlife.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So Deadpool kicks out of the house call, and this is the 3rd one that is hit, and this crowd goes nuts. They all thought this was the end. This is how Bryan Danielson would end his career, extending a hand to his family, which is another like aspect to this whole thing. Like it's one aspect of watching this, and you can hear Danielson's words and you can hear the commentators. You're also working this for 50,000 people that you have to express that without them being able to read your lips or to hear the commentary, and you're trying to get this. And this crowd, like, they went nuts for this near fall. So Bryan battles back and he powers to his feet and he's just eating these kicks. and he screams that he loves his family so much, and he fires back with slaps onto Swerve, and he is just swatting this guy with everything. These were some hard-ass slaps to come back, and he goes for the Busaiku knee, and Swerve just eats it and brushes it off. It has no effect on him.
This was so awesome.
Oh, this was like not as though like he just stayed on his feet. Like this was though like a gust of wind barely affected him.
This was like Swerve suddenly like turning into Super Saiyan mode that like we didn't even know he had. You know, like since when did this guy learn the ability to absorb Busaiku knees without any effect? Yeah, it was like the so badass and like so evil, and perfect for this match.
He lands another house call, and then he hits big pressure. And Danielson kicks out of that, and this crowd is going nuts. They cannot believe that Danielson has kicked out. So anyone that's going to argue, like it was the same thing like with the Undertaker streak. It was like, dude, this crowd was totally in the mindset that we might be watching Danielson's last match because they were losing it here for these near falls. Yeah. Swerve points in the air with the yes chant as Hangman storms the ringside area, tosses Prince Nana aside, and security is out. This distracts Swerve, who turns around and is nailed with the Busaiku. If this had been the finish, I would have been very critical of it because I thought this would have been like just too much of a I think people would have been very negative to this, but look at this guy. So it's only a near fall, but man, did this crowd bite on this near fall. It was an amazing false finish because everyone bit for it. They exchange, and then I really like the way they did this because you've now seen Swerve absorb this Busaiku, and he was able to eat it. But he goes for this forward roll, and Danielson uses Swerve's momentum against him because he rolls, and the momentum fires into this follow-up Busaiku, and then hits another from behind and applies the label lock. Swerve is fighting the grip when Danielson snaps the fingers, reapplies the submission, and he taps out Swerve at 25 minutes and 59 seconds to become your AEW World Champion.
Mm-hmm. I thought this match was incredible, and maybe the most emotional match I've seen this entire year. I really, I guess I can understand why some people would have really disliked this title versus career stipulation because I think they were already so convinced that Danielson was continuing after this. I thought they did such a great job of conveying that this could be Danielson's last match, and it wouldn't have been out of the question for me to like suddenly like have Danielson retire here and end his career like this abruptly, maybe because of doctor's orders or whatever else. But I came into this match actively convinced that this could be Danielson's last match, and because of that, I watched it like this was Bryan Danielson's last match. When you watch it like that, I mean, every moment was incredibly emotional. Seeing this guy in front of his kids and seeing his kids jump up and down excited that they were seeing their dad, perform on this big stage and cheering like their dad was a superhero, I thought was incredible. I thought the usage of them throughout helped add just such a special element to all of this. I thought Swerve was the most evil Swerve that we've seen. And yet like I end up liking him more coming out of this. And I thought this was one of the best Bryan Danielson moments of his career and matches of his career. Just the back and forth was really great, but for me, it was the emotional storytelling elements that I think added to it the most. I loved the opening video suggesting that, hey, this is a battle now between a guy choosing between his family and choosing between continuing his career. And the moment where he looked at his family and said, I'm sorry, I have to choose my career. That's my interpretation. Felt so like powerful to me, and I think made this like closing moment feel that much more special from your typical professional wrestling match. At this stage in my career, or my life, I should say, like I don't just look for like great bell to bell action. I look for that, but I look for that extra special element to take it over the top with story, and this match brought that in a big way.
Yeah, I thought this was a terrific main event to cap off this show. I think one of the more memorable matches you're going to have in AEW's history, and a very significant one. Of like, it's rare that they do their big title changes with the AEW title, and Danielson winning it for the first time. It guarantees you several more Danielson matches that they set up coming out of this. And then you had the BCC out. I should say the Bastard Combat Club, because it was Sans Moxley, but Claudio, Yuta, they come out, they bring the kids into the ring. Brie is there, and you got the big happy send-off moment at the end of this show. And overall, like, I think you just left this on such a high for people that like, I love the Ospreay MJF match. I think this is the match, though, that people are going to most associate with this show. Like, this was just a really spectacular, well done job. And again, I thought Swerve was just so excellent in the whole lead up to this match. He was great in this match. And like, listen, you're not going to be able to argue against this closing scene, but man, I could make a really compelling argument of
I was ready
keeping this.
I was ready for Swerve to be the one to retire Bryan Danielson. He was that good.
This guy has only been ascending in this role as champion. Like, you had tons left in the tank with Swerve as champion. I will not be disappointed at all if he gets this title again before the end of the year, but like, he was fantastic. And I think if not for this Danielson story, I don't think you would even consider taking the title off of him.
Agreed. Yeah. Tremendously satisfying match, main event, and tremendously satisfying show. I don't think there were really any blemishes on it. The only one you could point to was the disappointing reaction to Moné versus Baker, which, considering, I think, expectations, considering the star power, probably should have, we all expected maybe a better reaction for it. Was the show too long? Like, or were there pacing issues for this one?
I didn't find them at all.
I didn't find them either. Like,
no.
It felt good. Now, did every single match need to occur? I do actually have some criticism about, like, the undercard.
Are you including the pre-show?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I to me, some of those opening 6-man, 16-man tags, 10-man tags took away, I think, some of the specialty of seeing a multi-man match, either in the tag team setting or also in the London ladder match setting. I don't think every single person needs to be on these shows. Appearances, sure, but like, I don't need everybody wrestling on the show.
For the main card, 9 matches, I thought it was a good amount of what they had of that as well. So there you go, everyone. That was our review of AEW All In. Where are you going to be able to take calls potentially?
Sure. Yes.
All right. I too have to make a decision between wrestling and my family, and I am choosing my family. We have gone a lot longer than I anticipated, so I do apologize, folks, that I can't stick around longer. But you're in good hands with Wei Ting, and I will speak with everyone on Monday.
Thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. Hey, if those of you guys who have watched the press conference want to call in with any of those notes, we obviously are going live right after the show, so we are not really aware of any interesting notes. If there are any news and notes, drop them into the chat room or even call in if you so choose. Shout out to our man Neil Flanagan, that's out on the field right now attending the press conference, and you can hear from him on Pollock and Thurston this Wednesday. Let's start off with some of these phone calls here, and the aforementioned Corey, welcome to the show. What did you think of All In?
It was great. Miles ahead of last year. Miles and miles ahead of last year. I missed the pre-show and the first 2 matches. I was out on a walk, just enjoying the nice day. Went back and watched the Mariah May and Toni Storm match, which I was very surprised went on that early, but in retrospect might have been a pretty good idea, sans the really bad camera work before the entrance, where they just kind of zoomed in on an empty batch of crowd. I thought you couldn't find.
Yeah, I think that was meant to like suggest that we were glancing into the arena for that plaque deal. And by the way, before I even get to that, I want to I'm sorry I missed some of your super chats here, but Robert Pearson wanted to suggest whether or not the 1924 plaque was some Shining foreshadowing.
It was absolutely a Shining reference.
All work and no title makes Toni a dull girl. Okay, before I get flamed in the comments, I have not seen The Shining, so can you explain the reference, Corey?
It's the final shot of The Shining, where it zooms in on a picture of the people gathered at the hotel, and spoilers for a really old movie. You see Jack Nicholson there in the middle of there, and that's implying that he's become a part of the sort of haunting of the hotel, and so Toni has become a specter haunting Wembley.
Wembley Stadium. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
But it was a really, really good show. I think the big revelation for me was this casino battle royale. It's a great format, like just a work rate Royal Rumble, I think is such a great idea. And I think over the years we've seen a lot of comebacks in the Royal Rumble, a lot of debuts in the Royal Rumble. But because of the way it's designed with its over-the-top rope elimination, it doesn't allow for maybe the most robust debut. Here, you can like showcase a Ricochet, showcase a Nigel McGuinness, and like really feel like you got something substantive from them showing up in the match. And that was like a big revelation to me. I'm like, oh, the format works. And I liked it more than the 2 Royal Rumbles this year, if I'm being honest. It was really, really good. And the Toni Mariah match was incredible. Mariah, she has it. She is fantastic. I think she will be a great champion. Like, her slapping her mom was hilarious. The blade job was wild. And yeah, just incredible, great results. I can't wait to see what she does with the belt. In the main event, I mean, what more can I say that you guys haven't already? I think, especially more than anything else, Swerve is he is the complete package. He is the wrestler of the future. Him coming out with Bun B from UGK. Rest in peace to Pimp C. Incredible. Just what a big feeling match. What an important feeling match. Anything I could ever say about the build to the match. It's the Bianca Belair, Sasha Banks thing. The build didn't matter because you're not going to remember it after this. And my God, I'm not going to remember any of that. It was
The build certainly mattered for Danielson versus Swerve.
Yeah. But I just don't think I'll remember my quibbles with him not making a big deal out of it.
Right. Gotcha. What was your match of the night?
It was the main event. Undoubtedly the main event. It was incredible. Followed closely by the Casino Battle Royale. I really think they struck gold now. They found that stride with how to do this. So yeah, thumbs up all around. I can't say anything negative about this.
And so somebody in the chat room is mentioning that Ricochet versus Kyle Fletcher is on Dynamite this week. Allison Fletcher called out Ricochet on Twitter for a Dynamite match. Yet to confirm that, but do you like that direction?
Yeah, I mean it gives a very obvious connection to Will Ospreay. So it's
so that seems to be the direction.
Yeah, we're already on the road, and I mean with 2 weeks. I guess that would be are we getting Pac versus Will Ospreay? Is that what's happening?
Yes.
All out?
Yes, we
okay.
Are.
Okay, yeah. So I mean then we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer for that. So I mean hey, we're 2 high flyers in the view for Will Ospreay. Can't complain about that. All right.
Thank you very much, Corey. As always, appreciate the call. Let's go. Let's go up next to Carl Crosley, who sent the super chat earlier with £5. Thank you, Carl. He says, "Great show tonight. Feedback left from my bed. More in the feedback thread. Thanks to all you for all that both of you do. The greatest podcasters." Carl, Chris, and Lou. Shout out, Carl, Chris, and Lou. I think you might be the same people that called in from your bed last time. During last year's All In. So. That's where the after party is, clearly after the show. So thank you very much for that super chat. Let's go up next to Muggin. Hey, Muggin, welcome to the show.
The moral of the story: never chase the dragon. It doesn't end well for anybody.
And, yes, that is a great lesson. Thank you. Yes.
All in this year easily beat last year. By a country mile. I mean, there were strong matches throughout the night, throughout the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Swerve Danielson was some anime level shit. It truly was.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's nothing.
Swerve especially.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Swerve is in it for the long haul. Just because he lost the championship to Danielson, this is not gonna hurt him at all. I mean,
Oh,
he got elevated. He got elevated as a result, and
when
he's
he
going to be just fine.
Sorry to cut you off. When he started this title reign, I think like a lot of people like maybe we had our doubts. Like would he be overshadowed by like a impending arrival of a Will Ospreay, a Kazuchika Okada? Did his peak pass? During the heights of the Hangman Page feud, was it too late to by the time he actually won the championship? We really had nothing to worry about. I mean, like he especially with the Ospreay match and this match, he's more than cemented his status. He's taken these very high pressure situations, no pun intended,
Big pressure,
and he's excelled. I think beyond all of our expectations. Like so impressed with him during this run.
He thrives under big pressure. That's for sure. And like he got made. He got made and defeated. He's going to be just fine going forward. And also there were a couple of matches there were a few matches on the main show that would have left out, because Jericho and Hook like didn't do much for me. I skipped that one, and I thought Toni.
So how do you know it didn't do anything for you? You mean you just didn't have the anticipation for
it? I just can't stand Jericho's shtick these days, okay. And the Casino Gauntlet was strong, although it wasn't too hot about about who won it. Because even when that turtleneck son of a bitch loses, he still wins.
Yep.
And like this whole thing with Luchasaurus has been going on 2 years now, and I'm just itching for that shooter drop. And Toni Storm and Ryan May was a better match than Mercy and Britt Baker. I mean, Mercy and Britt had some sloppiness there, but the story with Toni and Mariah made their match even better. And I'm glad they didn't do the finish. I'm glad that Emilia Shirakawa didn't play to the outcome. I'm glad she kept out of it, and I'm glad Mariah won the championship. For relatively clean. And I feel like this needs to happen in order to keep this feud going, because I don't think this is the end yet. And also,
you think Toni and Mariah rematch, or do you think that's later on?
Yeah, I mean, I do see a rematch, not at all out, but like later on.
Right.
Not in 2 weeks, because there's still a lot to go. And I was expecting Statlander and Stokely to win on 0 Hour, because that will give Willow a bigger mountain to climb. But I'm glad that Statlander didn't take the pin in that one, because I feel like she needs the next time Statlander gets pinned is when Willow beats her in the blow off in 2 weeks. And it was also nice to see Ricochet in the Casino Gauntlet. I mean, like he did great as well.
Yeah.
Overall, I had a lot more fun with this year than I did last year.
I'm assuming a lot of people will echo those sentiments. I certainly do. I thought this year was a better built feud. I thought the card on paper was better. And I thought the entertainment value was that much more too. And
a couple more things. Good. And a couple more things. Garcia, I'm glad Garcia's sticking around, because I feel like he's this close from getting a breakout moment. So you can pencil him and MJF in Chicago in 2 weeks. And
would you have MJF show up that quickly after the Tiger Driver?
Well, I mean, therein lies the danger. Like, 'cause I mean, if he shows up on Wednesday, not selling it, that would have undercut Ospreay's victory. Because, and of course, there's also the thing with his Garcia's contract status hanging over him, because. I mean, for years, I've been watching that guy gain a lot of starts and stops, and like he's this close now. He's this close from breaking out, and I don't want to see MJF shake off the Tiger Driver so soon, because that would just undercut it. It was very cathartic seeing Ospreay hit the Tiger Driver in the title match, and it was also very nice to hear that Roger Craig Smith narrated his intro. He voices Ezio from Assassin's Creed.
Oh, okay, awesome. Well, thanks for that trivia note. Appreciate it. Thank you, Monkey.
Nice. I mean, Ubisoft must have paid a pretty penny to get involved.
But it was a good integration. Like, I don't think it overstepped any bounds. It helped make it feel more special, actually. So
yeah, but that main event was something else.
Was that your match of the night?
It was. It was something else. I mean, I'm very glad they kept Hangman's involvement to a minimum, and I'm glad they didn't work it to the finish, because it would have been cheap if Hangman intentionally screwed Bryan. And I'm also very, very glad they didn't pull the trigger on Christian Cage's title shot, because that would have echoed SummerSlam 13 all over again, because that would have been stupid.
Yeah,
if that would
that would have been
happen.
dissatisfying and unearned, to a lot of people. Thank you very much, Muggin, for the call, as always.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, let's go up next. First, the super chat here from Connor Flynn, who sends 249 euros. Great show. Opinion on AEW production. Lots of snags. Okay. I didn't think it was bad at all on this show. Like, I think on any major production, you can expect to see maybe like, I don't know, an improper cut somewhere, but to my eye, I didn't notice anything that glaring. Like, certainly not enough for me to say like, hey, this is a poorly produced show. Like, audio was good. I think, maybe I just have a lot of respect for just how complicated is shooting a professional wrestling show in a stadium with the amount of coverage that something like that entails, that I'm already impressed that even a show goes on air, much less the fact that it goes off without any sort of notable hitch. So if you notice something, Connor, that was a lot more glaring in particular that happened repeatedly throughout the show, please let me know. But to my eye, I was impressed by the production. Let's go lastly to Brandon from New Jersey, for the phones at least. Brandon, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
What's going on, man? How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for calling in.
Oh, man, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it, man. Much love. I think I'm with you, man. Or I don't know if you're with me or whatnot, but yeah, that Jericho match was. I hope this feud ends, but I have a feeling Jericho's gonna pick another youngling to latch onto like a barnacle and go on a another 7-month sojourn of a feud. What do you think about that?
So I think the big story coming out of that match is, well, the Taz spot was really great, but like the follow-up coming out of that match, the big thing is, again, no pun intended, it's Big Bill. Like, he's sort of the big story coming out of it. And I think this is their opportunity to catapult off of everything that they've already done into something that's Big Bill focused. He's been a background player. The crowd in the UK has kind of willed him into being more of a foreground player, and they need to capitalize on that. So I hope, he's still going to be a part of the learning tree, of course, but there might be a desire from the audience right now to want to see him rebel outside of the Jericho vortex, or at least like suggest it,
A Big Bill babyface run.
They'll babyface him, yeah. Now, would you be interested in a Big Bill Chris Jericho feud?
I don't know, man. I guess. I mean, but these feuds, Jericho feuds, man. Like, you can do so much with Big Bill, but he's gonna be trapped in that vortex of a feud if he feuds with Jericho for months. It's like, I don't know. I mean, if it helps Big Bill out, so be it. I mean, I respect his butters. They were bright green. They were green, right? His boots tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice touch. That's pretty expensive to get those dye style boots, but yeah, I mean, I'm down. AEW needs a good big man babyface. I'd be down with that. I mean, they haven't had a legit good big man since Wardlow or whatever. So or Daddy Ass maybe, but
any other highlights from you for tonight's show?
Love the main event. Bryan's the ultimate storyteller for pro wrestling. Greatest of all time. I put him up there with anybody. He's and Swerve is awesome too. I had my doubts on his title run. I wasn't really feeling it at the time, but I'm with everybody. He came out looking strong at the end of this match. So respect to both competitors.
What did you think about the exclusion of Mr. Eagles Don't Hunt Flies, Jon Moxley?
I have my theories, but I mean, it's pure gossip. I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm not a gossiper, so it's kind of weird.
You're not a gossiper, please come on.
No, I mean, God, come on. It's kind of weird. I hope he was probably watching his daughter while his wife was working. So he's being a dad. Probably took his daughter around the sites, see Big Ben and whatnot, and the Tower of London. So maybe he was just being a dad this weekend. So I respect him for that.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Quebec kid Mike Murray on his Post Sparks episode. I loved it. Respect to him. All right, I'll let you go. Have a
Thank
good
you, Brandon.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Lovely edition of Postmarks with Bruce and David. That's out right now on our cafe feed for free for everybody, from our very good friend Mike Murray, talking about his just history with professional wrestling, his history with sort of like being around live audio wrestling and everything else. One of the good guys that are out there. So those are all of our calls. Let's go up next to forum.postwrestling.com, where all of our Post Wrestling Cafe patrons can leave feedback for every single one of the shows that John and I do, and more, actually. So let's start things off here with Benjamin, who says, one of the things that I was reminded of, and not sure how, but was the early years of AEW. Jim Ross was taking criticism for adding Jack Perry onto the Jungle Boy name, and then he had responded to that criticism by saying it would benefit Perry down the road. We're down that road now, and there's no more Jungle Boy, but Jack Perry has become a solid, smug and smirking heel. I just thought that was worth mentioning. I was always pro, adding Jack Perry to the name. Maybe the concern at that point was that, would it take away whatever sort of color this guy had as a character, and they found a new character for him that I think has kind of taken over by this point. Good show, as per the usual, but the surprises were refreshing and exciting. Seeing Nigel McGuinness back in the ring was great, but I'm glad all the home country talent got their time and moments. I'm looking forward to Hayter, Ricochet, Garcia, and more having renewed runs, and looking forward to seeing what Ricochet can do without poorly scripted promos. That could be good and bad. I'm curious to see what Ricochet would sound like without scripted promos, too. And yeah, it could be good and bad. I'm hoping that it's good for him. Gauntlet match and Storm versus May were the highlights for me. I love the main event, and it has me genuinely curious about what's next and how long Danielson will hold the title. Great to see Bree and the whole family in the ring. Heartwarming finish. Great storytelling. Admittedly, I'm sad to see Swerve's run in, and I hope he's back in the top spot sooner rather than later. Well, you can definitely bet for the Seattle show. I think all the Pacific Northwest guys are going to have big spots, I would assume, provided Darby Allin is back, which I think he should be. He escaped out of the coffin tonight thanks to Sting, so I imagine he'll have a big moment. I think Swerve will have a huge homecoming. I don't think he continues. He was a babyface heading into this program, and I think he will be that much bigger of a babyface coming out of this program, despite threatening Bryan Danielson's kids. Because again, Swerve threatening kids only makes us like him more. The reception coming out of this match, and I think the real world sort of like respect people have that for Swerve coming out of this is going to be emphasized, and he'll be that much of a bigger babyface now that he doesn't have the championship. Let's go to Andrew from Cape Breton, who says, the show was an all-timer. It may have been one of the best shows I've ever seen. The pre-show matches were great and set the tone for the night. Instead of gushing of everything, I'll go through some highlights and a few of the lowlights. The main event was incredible. The Casino Gauntlet was incredible. Nigel McGuinness coming out was one of the best surprise entrants I've ever seen, but I might be biased as I was an ROH fan back in the day. Toni and Mariah are match of the night on any other night. The only negatives were Hook and Jericho and the Baker Moné match. Jericho's stuff is very tired, and the roster has passed Britt by as far as talent goes. I know Baker and Jericho are big stars, but there were big pops for Tommy Billington, Kip Sabian, and the Dark Order. People were there to see AEW from top to bottom, and I think some of the underused talents like Shida should get more of a chance to shine on the big stage. The people will be there for them. That being said, amazing show. You know the ending was wonderful when Pat cracks a smile. I don't know if that's like a fair comparison point. The fact that like Tommy Billington and Kip Sabian like received good reactions and Baker and Jericho didn't. I almost feel like they're kind of playing in like different leagues, and expectations are going to be very different for like somebody who's a local showing up in like an undercard versus what might have higher elevated expectations. It's fair, but it's fair to say, like, they probably should have received bigger reactions, but I don't know if it's a direct, apples to apples comparison. Let's go to Luigi, who says, a very fun show, but not perfect by any means. 2 stellar world title matches, a strong international title match, and one of the best endings to an AEW show ever. Really loved these 3 matches, but felt the show dragged with the finish of the Gauntlet. The match was great, though. And the TBS, FTW, and title matches. Also, what was with the small ladders? Yes, one of the big questions coming out of this. England, what's with your very small ladders? Cody from Maine, there's so much to take away from this outstanding event, but top of the list for me is to give Swerve his flowers. Just an unbelievable run he's had to solidify his spot as one of the top guys in the industry. The Casino Gauntlet was minted as a premier attraction for the company, a great balance of in-ring action and surprises with Ricochet's debut and the return of Nigel. I still can't believe I get to type that. What a moment. The only issue I had was with the finish. Christian winning is fine, but to again tease the kill switch turn only to have it be a swerve was disappointing. I wouldn't disagree. I can only have faith that they're setting it up for a bigger moment, but yes, I did also react to all of that with a bit of a groan. Aside from that shortcoming, Jericho hook was what it was, while Britt and Moné suffered from having to follow Will Ospreay in the UK. I wonder if swapping the women's matches would have helped. Also, Ospreay as world champion can wait 2 years until the next All In. Okay, so first point here. Moné and Baker swapping places with Toni and May. I think would have definitely helped Moné and Baker. Would it have hurt Toni and Mariah May, given I think the tremendous interest they had, people had in the story, and I think the quality of the match? I think it's an interesting question. You know, I certainly think people would have been a lot more invested in Mariah May and Toni Storm even coming after Will Ospreay versus MJF, but not to the level, probably not to the level that they were, you know, as in the place that it was. So would it have helped the card overall? I'm gonna say yes, but would it have hurt Toni Storm versus Mariah May as a singular match? I would say yes to that as well. All right, let's go up next to Bryan in New Jersey, who says, I love the show. The main event was my match of the night for both its action and its story, and I really enjoyed MJF versus Will Ospreay, as well as the Casino Gauntlet, a true winner of a match concept for the company. This one reminded me of the GCW clusterfuck, except it was better booked and had some of the best wrestlers in the world. Yeah, it kind of is like the clusterfuck in terms of just like random intervals, sort of like holy shit pairings that you wouldn't have expected, because it's not like they're just, you know, pulling roster members out. They're pulling from all the associated companies that they're involved with, and also debuting wrestlers as well. So yeah, it's sort of like a serious clusterfuck. In addition to Bryan celebrating with his family, Jamie Hayter's return was one of my favorite moments of the night, and it's on YouTube, so go back and watch it after post wraps up. My biggest disappointment was Mercedes Moné versus Dr. Britt Baker, and I wouldn't even call it bad. Toni Storm and Mariah May blew them out of the water, and not just because their match had a better build. I hope there are no serious injuries out of the London Ladders match and its sturdy tables. Christian got up and returned later, but I didn't see Buddy Matthews get up. I'm sure we'll find out soon enough if anybody got hurt. We certainly hope not. Let's go to Jordan from the Bronx, who says, Bryan Danielson is untouchable in the ring. Swerve was a supervillain. Bree and the children were perfectly placed. I was so invested in that title match that I actually thought that it was Bree running in and beating up security and head into the Hangman. Yeah, that would have been quite something here. She can come out and deliver twin magic, perhaps. That would have been interesting. That match told a fantastic story from the entrances throughout. That was pro wrestling excellence. The future Christian Danielson Darby program will be a lot of fun. Mariah and Toni was another example of an excellent and complete in-ring story. Instead, this supervillain showed exactly how far she was willing to go to win. If it weren't for the main event, this would be my match of the night. The Gauntlet match was a lot of fun in the surprises and the different weaving of guys who you would never imagine would share a ring. Overall, I enjoyed this All In match much more than last year's. Definitely a top 5 show of the year. And then we go to Carl from the UK, who says, Hi, John and Way. Want to give a big shout out to Bryan from New Jersey for his feedback on Rewind to SmackDown. I laughed out loud when he remembered me and my mate Chris in bed at last year's All In. Yes, so this confirms this is that Carl. This year I am again leaving feedback from bed. However, this time at home with my wife Lou. No calling in, however, as I would no doubt be a single man tomorrow if Lou realized she was on video when she was asleep. Yes, good call. Chris and his family are at a music festival and could not attend in person. A great show tonight, and I can confirm that Chris and I will be at Forbidden Door in 2025, wherever in London it is, and we will be leaving video feedback. All right, look forward to that. Make sure you do it from bed, though, Lou. So let's make that a tradition. Lastly, we go here to Stig, who says, I wanted to call in, but it's getting late, and I need to be up earlier to get home for my wife and daughter's birthday. Anyway, I went to All In last year and tonight, and I have to say, I think this year blew last year's out of the water. This year had much better stories going into the show to get you more invested, and despite there being less numbers, the atmosphere was so good. Every match had something I enjoyed about it, but the main three were the Gauntlet, US, and World title matches. The Casino Gauntlet was super entertaining with great surprises and stacked with talent. However, I felt a little let down by the ending. Part of me thought, in brackets wished, that Copeland was coming out during the last countdown, even though I knew realistically it wasn't possible. But the match itself was fun. Ospreay MJF was amazing. No one can convince me that Ospreay isn't the best in the world right now. I felt sorry for the TBS match having to follow. That crowd really zoned out, unfortunately. Sting's guest spot made me jump out of my seat and cheer my heart out. I love Sting, may have shed a tear. The main event was fantastic and I bit on every near fall. Both guys played their parts perfectly and it was an amazing moment to close out the show. The crowd were phenomenal throughout the main event. Had a blast tonight. We'll be back for Forbidden Door. I hope that it's in the O2 Arena as I think they'll struggle to fill Wembley with that show. Love you guys. Thanks for all the content, Stu. All right. Thank you to all of you guys who left feedback. Again, we leave that open to members of the POST Wrestling Café, which is our Patreon. If you enjoy this podcast, if you enjoy any of our shows, and if you want to get more of it, we offer like 2 to 3 bonus shows every single week. This is our Patreon. This is how we continue to steer the ship here at Post Wrestling, which isn't just podcast, but a fully fledged news website and reporting arm and really just a slew of podcasts every single day here. So postwrestlingcafe.com if you want to support that. $6 a month. Very important, and I should really note this right now. Those of you that are hoping to subscribe and hoping to do it, I would encourage you to do it through the website on a desktop browser, postwrestlingcafe.com, rather than on Apple directly. If you subscribe on Apple through the Patreon app, there is going to be, I don't think it's instituted just yet, but I think in the coming months there's going to be an extra charge attached to it, and that's just the Apple tax. So it'll be cheaper if you sign up through a web browser. I don't believe Android users are affected by this, but to be safe, just go to postwrestlingcafe.com on any desktop and fill up your information. $6 a month, and then you just get all your shows. You get these shows ad-free. You get Collision Course. We get our SmackDown reviews with John and I every Friday. Rewind Away, where we just looked at WrestleMania 10. So if you want a bit of a comparison point to see maybe I don't know, Brett in 94 and Lex Luger and those types, and maybe how MJF looked tonight. Well, you can listen to that one. And then a whole bunch of other shows. So just go to postwrestlingcafe.com, check out the schedule. And thank you all in the YouTube that are watching us right now, like almost 800 of you. Even if you're not going to subscribe to the channel, please do us a favor, subscribe to if you're the YouTube channel, even if you're not going to subscribe to our Patreon. All right, that's it for me, and the show has gone really long. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Rewind Raw at 11 p.m. Eastern, usual time. All right, bye-bye.